Chapter 49. Quick, keep up. Meldas reminded the members who were exhausted to keep up with the team. They had to be as fast as possible. The 300 elven archers were already exchanging fire with the dark elf army guards outside the nest. They used a scatter tactic so that they could hold back the guards. Very quickly, the 300 elven archers attracted most of the enemies. Meldas and the rest took this opportunity to sneak into the warlock's nest. The reason why they were so familiar with the location of the warlock's nest was because of the information provided by the forest witches. The entrance of the warlock's nest was at the side of the mountain. There were rugged rocks, and a naturally formed cave became the entrance of the nest. Meldas took care of the few guards and entered the nest one by one. Once they entered, the nest was much bigger than they imagined. The interior of the mountain was very spacious and could be described as endless. However, the lighting in the nest was not good and the layout was very messy. It seemed to be modified according to the structure of the mountain. In short, there were many rooms in the cave. Meldas and the rest were helpless and could only search for the warlocks and my whereabouts. Just as Meldas and the rest were exploring the nest, pairs of blood-red eyes were staring at them in the darkness. At that moment, they did not know that danger was approaching them. After searching many rooms, Meldas and the rest found nothing. Gradually, they started to get impatient and discouraged. Suddenly, many figures appeared in the darkness, and everyone was surrounded by these people. PFFF, Flant's arm was cut by a dagger, and fresh blood flowed out. Everyone be careful. Before Meldas could finish his sentence, a cold light flashed in the darkness, and he was almost stabbed in the heart by a dagger. Who are they? Arwina immediately drew her bow and aimed at the shadows. If I did not remember wrongly, these are the warlock's guards, dark elf assassins. Melda's expression was serious. It seemed that the abilities of this group of people were not to be underestimated. Everyone gather together and do not separate. Melda said immediately. Thus, everyone gathered together. The surrounding dark elf assassins did not charge forward. They were quietly waiting for an opportunity. After such a long battle, the tacit understanding between Meldas and the others had improved. Avina and Meldas shot arrows into the darkness, and a few assassins could not dodge in time and fell to the ground. Natalia cast a flame blast, turning many of the assassins into ashes. For a moment, the assassins didn't dare to act rashly. Yet at this time, all of the assassins disappeared because the Yao art master Delamere had personally appeared. Natalia was very excited and released a fireball. Delamere calmly waved his left hand and blocked her attack. Everyone immediately tensed up because their target had appeared. At this moment, Delamere's face began to turn ferocious, as if a dark magic was beginning to cover his entire body. Have a taste of the power from hell. The warlock's hands turned into black claws like the claws of a demon. Shadow Claw. Delamere's arm suddenly elongated, and the black claws were about to pierce through Natalia's chest. Just as Delamere's black claws were about to pierce through Natalia's chest, an explosive arrow suddenly shot into Delamere's arm. Delamere's claws shook, and Natalia dodged the attack. A bunch of reckless fellows. Have a taste of the power of shadow, darkness growth. Delamere cast a very powerful magic. Instantly, the space in the hall was shrouded in boundless darkness, and everyone could not see each other. Suddenly, there was a light in the darkness, and everyone saw hope. Come out, elf dragon wept. Avina used almost all of her strength to summon a huge dragon covered in sparkling and translucent scales. That's right, this dragon was the magical beast that Avina and I had found on the deserted island. In less than a month, it had grown to this size. The elf Ron Whip opened its mouth and actually sucked the surrounding dark elements into its stomach. I didn't expect you to have some skills. Delamere's expression did not change at all. Natalia also used all of her magic to release a huge burning fireball, which directly smashed onto Delamere's body. Delamere let out a painful scream. However, the following scene shocked everyone. Delamere's body turned into a shadow, and the fireball passed through his body and hit the wall behind him. With a loud bang, a hole appeared in the wall, and a lot of rocks fell from the roof. At the same time, two huge black shadow wings grew out of Delamere's back. His entire body was like a huge shadow standing in midair. Damn it, he's too strong. Natalia was unwilling to give up. If not for the fact that her magic was almost depleted, she would definitely have used another fireball. Let's attack together. Everyone used their killing moves because they knew that this was the decisive moment. If they did not attack now, they might not have another chance to attack in the future. In an instant, all kinds of attacks were thrown at Delamere, including the elf Ronwhip, who charged at Delamere without any regard for his own safety. Delamere did not dodge because he was very confident in himself. Boom, boom, boom. This time, there were many explosions in the hall, causing the originally unstable den to start to collapse. This is the power that Lord Erdeel has bestowed upon me. You cannot defeat me, Delamere said loudly. The previous attacks were all cancelled out by his powerful magic. Is that so? Then I would like to see how strong Erdeel is. At this moment, I walked in step by step from the entrance of the hall. Delamere, make your move, I said calmly. At this moment, everyone was at a loss because of me. I stood there all of a sudden. They did not expect to meet me like this. Then I shall not hold back, Delamere said. Suddenly, Meldas felt the surrounding magic increase. It seemed that Delamere was going to be serious this time. Without saying anything, I charged at Delamere, who was floating in midair. The moment I leaped off the ground, I did a 360-degree spin in midair. Like a black whirlwind, I crashed into Delamere's body. Boom! Delamere was sent flying far away. There were many wounds on his abdomen and body. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. It seems that you are really strong, Delamere said. Chapter 50. The others were so shocked by my sudden appearance that they couldn't say a word. They even forgot to fight. Then, only Delamere and I were left fighting one-on-one. The others couldn't interfere at all. Our intense battle caused many cracks to appear on the not-so-sturdy mountain. The entire lair could collapse at any time. Rocks kept falling from the sky. Meldas quickly brought the others out of the lair. It seems that this is no longer a battle that we can participate in, Flint said. Let's go. If we stay here, we might die at any time, Meldas said solemnly. Finally, everyone retreated from the Yao art master's lair. Only Delamere and I remained in the lair, locked in battle. We stared at each other, and both of us were injured. Nightmare invasion. Let me let you feel the anger from hell, Delamere said. A black light flashed and enveloped me. Nightmare invasion was an extremely terrifying magic spell. The power of nightmare invasion was to make the target fall into an endless and terrifying hell and fight continuously. It was similar to a sealing spell until the target died in battle. Otherwise, they would never be able to escape. Yin Long's roar. I released my strongest magic too. Following my roar, a dazzling red light instantly dispelled the black light enveloping my body and bounced off Delamere's body. No! With a loud sound, Delamere was sent flying and slammed into the wall behind him. Gradually, Delamere's body started to disappear from the bottom of his feet. I fell to the ground and panted as I looked at Delamere, who was disappearing. Ended just like that. Delamere's consciousness started to blur. Delamere felt as though he had returned to the past. Back then, he and Elovis were both princes of the Elf Kingdom. They both fell in love with the moon god's great druid Karina at the same time. However, the great druid loved Delamere more. The older brother, Elovis, was jealous of his younger brother and reported the relationship between Delamere and the great druid to the Elf King. The moon god's great druid was a servant of God and couldn't fall in love. When the Elf King heard about this, he was furious and ordered the great druid to be burned to death. Delamere had no choice but to take his lover and escape from the Elf Kingdom. However, Elovis refused to let Delamere go. He defeated Delamere and captured the great druid. The archdruid was brought back to the Elven Kingdom and burned to death in front of all the elves. Delamere was so angry that he lost his mind. He swore to destroy the Elven Kingdom to avenge his lover. Later on, Delamere met the black dragon Erdeel. Erdeel imparted a portion of his power to him. Delamere took Lawson, the only flesh and blood the great druid left for him, and hid in the dark forest, degenerating into a warlock. Before that, he had used the seeds of the poisonous vines to create the dark elves. Karina, we are about to be reunited. There will be no more pain. Delamere finally disappeared from this space. Suddenly, a shadow flew out of Delamere's body and into mine. This is the third magic equipment, Athol's Freedom. It is also called Shadow Wings. It belongs to you now. These were the last words Delamere said. At the borders of the Elven Kingdom, there was fighting everywhere. Corpses were strewn everywhere, and rivers of blood flowed. The battle between the Dark Elven Army and the Elven Army had reached its climax. With a deafening explosion, Lawson, who was leading the Dark Elven Army, saw the warlock's nest in the distance completely collapse. "Father!" Lawson cried out in pain. At this moment, Lawson and Mina led the remnants of the Dark Elven Army and were surrounded by Killian's Elven Army. "It's over. You and your Dark Elven Army." Killian pointed his sword at Lawson. "As long as I don't die, don't even think about hurting him." Mina, the Heart of Flames, stood in front of Lawson. She had lost an arm. "Don't fight like a cornered beast." Killian said, "My father won't die." Lawson didn't know if he was lying to himself. "Then I'll grant you your wish." Jeline flew towards Lawson, a powerful wave of magic preventing Lawson from moving. He looked on helplessly as the cold blade pierced through his chest. Blood slowly dripped on Lawson's face. However, Lawson didn't die, because Mina had used her body to block the sword for him. "Little fool, I know you've liked me since you were young, but from the moment I chose to follow your father, King Delamere, I fell deeply in love with this melancholy man. Lie well." Mina spat out a mouthful of blood, and her body turned into flames, dissipating with the wind before Lawson's eyes. "No!" Lawson cried out in pain. Killian didn't stop. The tip of his sword slanted upwards, cutting Lawson's left eye and causing blood to spurt out. In pain, Lawson lost his footing and fell off the cliff. Killian led his army to annihilate the remaining remnants of the Dark Elven Army. Just like that, the Great War came to an end. The war had finally come to an end. History was written by the victors. A few days later, a grand celebration was held in the plaza of the Elven Kingdom's capital, Ivenia. During the ceremony, Elven King Elovies personally gave out medals to all who contributed. Everyone received a medal of glory made from elven gems. Under the radiance of flowers and light, Elovies announced that the war had ended with the Elven Kingdom's complete victory. Meldas once again became a legendary figure among the elves, but he didn't care much about glory. No one knew where he went to roam the world. Brave warriors of freedom, the darkness has never forced us to submit. We have risked our lives for our homeland. This war has caused many of our companions and loved ones to leave us, but their sacrifice was worth it. The Moon Goddess will not abandon our Elven Kingdom. Now, let us remember those brave warriors. Elven King Elovies gave his speech in the plaza. The celebration lasted for the entire morning. After that, it was a celebration of victory. The elves toasted to their victory. No one knew what I had encountered in the warlock's lair that day. Even I had lost that part of my memory. I only remembered the battle with the warlock Delamere after I woke up. Now, I had already collected 3 of Athol's magic weapons. I still didn't know how to use them, nor did I know what they meant to me. I didn't know why they knew my name every time, as if they had known me from the start. All of this is a mystery to me. No matter what, it was time for us to return. This time, our team had one more member, and that was the famous Cinca Sea pirate leader, Loftus. I thought about what Highside the Elder would say to us every time we returned. "Children, welcome home. Who knows, maybe tomorrow would be a new adventure." I was already satisfied with the company of my companions. Chapter 51. Every era had a legend that belonged to it, and behind every legend was a famous hero. This story happened before the Black Dragon attacked the capital of Kelendil, and it was the story of the King of the Northland. The protagonist of our story was Gravel, born in a declining noble family in the Northland of the Empire. His father was addicted to gambling and whoring, and ruined the family property and fief left behind by his ancestors. In Gravel's generation, the family property left behind by his ancestors was only an ancient two-handed sword and a swallowtail flag that symbolized the status of a trainee knight. It was a black eagle flag with black edges and white background, and it was once the symbol of Gravel's family's glory. Gravel's mother couldn't stand her husband's rudeness and lack of ambition, so she remarried to someone else. Gravel felt that his life was terrible, and he began to give up on himself. He had also become like his father, wasting his time in a muddle-headed manner. All these changes began on the day of Gravel's father's funeral. When Gravel was 10 years old, his father accidentally fell into a deep ditch on his way home due to drinking and died. On the day of his father's funeral, many people came to the house. Among them were Gravel's relatives, creditors who came to collect debts, and even the owner of the bar that his father frequented came. With so many people coming at once, Gravel was at a loss. In this way, his father was buried amidst the not-so-sincere tears of the crowd. When his father died, the few things left in the house were quickly taken away by the people who came to attend the funeral. Under Gravel's desperate protection, the two-handed sword and the family's flag were not taken away. In fact, Gravel had mixed feelings about his father's death. Although his father didn't do much as a father, he was still his biological father. Facing his father's cold body, Gravel cried alone. He asked the Almighty God, why was his life so full of misfortune? His father's death made Gravel feel that he could no longer waste his time like this, because his father's end was a living example. So he made up his mind to leave home and become an apprentice to a merchant. Due to Gravel's outstanding performance, the merchant recommended Gravel to a knight as a squire. One had to know that in the German Empire, the status of a knight was extremely noble. Being able to become a knight was something that every boy yearned for. In addition to the daily work, Gravel also learned a lot from this knight. Later on, this knight unfortunately died in battle, and the knight's property became someone else's. Gravel had no choice but to take the sword and flag and leave this sad place. Gravel was already 18 years old. It had been 8 years since his father passed away. Now, Gravel was once again left with nothing. The only things that accompanied him were the sword and the flag. Right now, the entire empire was a place where danger and opportunity coexisted. Many people became rich overnight, but even more people had their families broken up and their families broken up. Gravel boarded a cargo ship headed to the southern part of the empire. The cargo ship finally docked at the port. Thanks to the heavens, Gravel didn't encounter any pirates along the way. After getting off the ship, Gravel saw a few overseers at the dock using whips to whip the slaves who were moving the goods onto the ship. Gravel couldn't stand this kind of practice because he felt that all people were born equal, but he knew that he was a newcomer and it was better to avoid trouble. Besides, he had no power or influence and couldn't be of much help. But fate was so coincidental. A thin and weak slave tried to escape and ran towards Gravel. Gravel watched as the slave was caught by the overseer in front of him. The overseer went up and beat him without saying a word. "Bah, a piece of trash like you wants to escape. Cheap life." After the overseer scolded, he gave the slave a hard kick. Is there really a difference between a person's life and a person's? Gravel scolded himself in his heart. "Enough," Gravel said loudly to the overseer. The passers-by all looked at Gravel, and after a few seconds, they went back to their own business. They might have been used to this kind of life where the strong preyed on the weak, and numbness became their true portrayal. At this time, the overseer looked at the young man in front of him. "Hey, kid, you'd better mind your own business and watch your head. This is my master's slave, and we can do whatever we want. What can you do?" The overseer said in a threatening tone, and at the same time, he gave the slave 2 more kicks. "But he's not your slave anymore." Gravel threw a bulging money bag to the overseer. There were 100 silver dragon coins in the bag, and it was all Gravel had saved up when he was a retainer for a knight for several years. At that time, an ordinary family's monthly income was only about 30 silver dragon coins. Originally, Gravel wanted to use the money to do some small business, but it seemed that his plan was ruined. Sometimes it was not easy to be a good person, and there was a price to be paid for being a good person. The overseer took the money bag and carefully looked at Gravel. Looking at Gravel's clothes and temperament, he did not look like a child from an ordinary family. In fact, everything that Gravel had was inherited from the knight who died in battle. Moreover, some of his thoughts were instilled in Gravel by the knight. The strong exist to protect the weak. The weak have to work hard to become strong, to protect the weak. Do not bully the weak and fear the strong. This is the true meaning of a knight's spirit. This was what the knight who died in battle often taught Gravel. The overseer was afraid of offending Gravel. If he was the young master of a prominent noble family, it would be difficult to deal with him. On the other hand, the money that Gravel gave him was enough for the overseer to buy 2 or 3 slaves. All right, stinky kid. Today, I'll give this young master some face and let you go. The overseer pointed at the slave and said. The slave looked at Gravel with tears of gratitude, and for a moment, he did not know how to express his gratitude. This disturbance came to an end. Gravel went from the dock to a nearby hotel, and the slave dragged his bruised body and followed Gravel. Chapter 52. Didn't I tell you already? You have already regained your freedom. You can do what you want to do. Don't follow me anymore. Gravel turned around and said. This was the 5th time Gravel persuaded the slave to leave. But you are my savior. My mother said that people should know how to repay kindness. So, I want to repay you by being your follower. Listen, no one has the right to order others around like cattle or horses. Even the king is no exception. But I am willing to be your follower. My name is Gravel. What is your name? Gravel helped the injured slave up. My name is Tawny, master. The slave said. Tawny, don't call me master. We are equal companions. Just call me Gravel. Remember, you and I are companions now. Yes, Lord Gravel. Tawny nodded. Just like that, the two of them found a small hotel to stay in. The reason why Gravel chose this hotel was because they could pay on credit. Now that Gravel was penniless, he could only take one step at a time. In the room of the hotel, Gravel simply bandaged Tawny's wounds. At night, Gravel lay on the bed, unable to fall asleep. What should I do? How can I pay for the hotel? Where will I go in the future? These questions lingered in Gravel's mind for a long time. It wasn't until dawn in the east that Gravel felt a little sleepy. But soon, he couldn't sleep anymore. After a while, Gravel got up, put on his clothes, and left the hotel. He wanted to try his luck and see if he could find a job here. At this time, Tawny was still sleeping and didn't respond at all. At this time, the streets were deserted. There was not a single person. This doesn't make sense. This is the port city of the German Empire. It shouldn't be so deserted even in the morning. Suddenly, a figure flashed out from the corner of the street. That person quickly ran towards Gravel. Gravel had a bad feeling about this. He couldn't help but tighten his grip on his sword. Stop. Kid, hand over your money. At this moment, 2 people appeared behind Gravel at some point in time. Like the man who was running towards Gravel, these 3 men were wearing black hoods and tattered leather clothes. It seemed that Gravel had been robbed by a group of bandits. At the same time, on the other side of the street, in a bar facing Gravel, a tall and burly bald man was talking with a fierce-looking supervisor. Horf, this time, my information is definitely correct. I saw with my own eyes that this kid casually threw out 100 silver coins, and it was to save a slave who deserved to die. Look at him. He must be a rich man. The supervisor with a fierce face said. That's right. This supervisor was the one Gravel had met at the dock. Good. If this is a good job, I'll give you 10%. In addition, I'll catch a few more slaves for you. The bald man with a scar on his face said with a smile. With that, the bald man grabbed his wine glass and leisurely looked across the street at Gravel's side. Gravel tried to calm himself down. After all, this was not the first time he had encountered bandits. Before, when he was following the knight, he had encountered several robberies. But fortunately, the knight was quick-witted, so there were no casualties. He heard the sound of swords being unsheathed. Not good. Gravel secretly complained in his heart. Gravel decisively took a few steps back and dodged the bandits' first strike. At the same time, he used the inertia to pull out his sword. Originally, a two-handed sword was very clumsy to wield, but Gravel had received special training to wield a two-handed sword, so the sword in Gravel's hand was very flexible. Gravel skillfully used the sword to block the three bandits' attacks, at the same time looking for a way to break through the enemy. Poof! Blood spurted out from Gravel's left arm. The sword left a wound on his left arm that showed the bone. Gravel dodged quickly. If not, his left arm would have been cut off. Boy, surrender obediently. Gravel's forehead was covered in cold sweat. If this continued, it would be very disadvantageous for him. He could not continue to waste time like this. It was better to end it with a sword. Gravel used all his strength to strike and actually cut off one of the bandits' head. Blood splashed on Gravel's face. The other two bandits saw this scene, and their faces turned pale. Run! The remaining two bandits turned around and ran. Gravel did not chase after them. After all, he was also injured. The tall, bald man who originally wanted to watch the show in the bar suddenly flew into a rage. When the supervisor saw this scene, his legs trembled in fear. Go to hell. It can be considered as revenge for my brother. The cold dagger pierced the supervisor's body. Looking at the bald man in disbelief, the supervisor fell limply to the ground. After killing the bandit, the tall, bald man quickly left the bar. As for Gravel, his hand was holding the sword and his face was covered in blood. This was the first time in his life that Gravel killed someone. Although he killed a bandit, his heart was still very heavy. Gravel was about to turn around and leave when someone called him from behind. Are you okay? But at least you're still alive. The others are not so lucky. You killed a bandit who made our street restless. I have something to ask of you. There are too many people here. Come with me. A middle-aged man wearing a gorgeous leather coat said very respectfully. Gravel had nowhere to go, so he agreed to the middle-aged man's request. The two quickly passed through several streets and finally arrived at the middle-aged man's house. The man brought a basin of hot water and wiped the blood off Gravel's face. My name is Salem. I'm a businessman from Kellendale. My name is Gravel. Don't be too restrained. I'm not a bad person. I just have something to talk to you about. Uncle Salem, what's the matter? It's like this. My brother and I came here to do business, but my brother was robbed on the way back to Kellendale. The robbers wanted me to pay 3,000 silver dragon coins before they were willing to let him go. Where can I find so much money? But according to my investigation, this group of robbers seems to be the same as the ones you met this morning. But after seeing your skills, I, who was originally in despair, felt hope. I just killed someone. This is not very good. It's okay. I have a good relationship with the guard captain here. You just killed a bandit. They won't pursue it. Just kill the bandit. Gravel did not expect that human life was so worthless here. Chapter 53. Gravel paid the bill with the money that Salem gave him and went to the market with Tawny. Sir, what are we going to do? Tawny asked curiously. I just received a big deal, but I need blood and a sharp sword to complete it. I don't understand, my sir. You know how to ride a horse, right? Gravel asked Tawny, who was beside him. I don't. The two of them went to a horse dealer, and Gravel bought a horse. Then the two of them went to the blacksmith shop. What kind of weapon are you proficient in? Gravel asked Tawny. I've never used a weapon. Then I'll buy you a short sword to defend yourself. Just like that, after the two of them had prepared some equipment and rations, they went to a small village nearby. This village was under the jurisdiction of Port Prin, and the fields and orchards in the village were full of vitality. The wheat sacks and dried meat that could be seen everywhere were the best proof of the village's agricultural and pastoral production capacity. Gravel rode into the village, and Tawny followed Gravel. A few elderly men sat under the shade of a tree at the entrance of the village, smoking the tobacco that they had grown. The people here were very enthusiastic about the arrival of outsiders. This is really a paradise. Gravel and Tawny chatted. Yes, I really wish I could make a home here. But now, I'm more willing to follow you. Gravel dismounted and tied the horse under a tree. Sir, I want to ask if there are any young people here who want to go out and make a living? Gravel asked an older man. What? I'm old, and my ears can't hear. Speak louder. Sir, Do you have any young people here who want to find a job? Gravel raised his voice. Young people, they've all been taken away by the recruiting officers. As he spoke, the old man blew out a smoke ring. It seems that we've come to the wrong place, sir, Tani said. Let's stay here for a few days and see if there are any other opportunities. Gravel and Tani came to a rundown hotel to stay for the time being. After 2 days, Gravel had scouted out the entire village. Most of the young adults in this village had been conscripted by the Imperial conscription officers, but there were still a dozen or so who hadn't been taken away. However, these people did not look forward to living a life of swords and sabers. They wanted to live an ordinary life. On the night of the 3rd day, Gravel decided to leave with Tani the next morning and try somewhere else. The next day, Gravel and Tani prepared to pack up and leave the village. Where do we go next, my lord? Tani asked. Let's take it one step at a time. Sir, look. Tani pointed at a place not far from the village, where a raging fire was burning. Let's go and see what's going on. Gravel rode towards the place where the fire had started, and Tani followed behind him. They saw a few bandits robbing the villagers. In order to intimidate the villagers, they had set fire to their granary. What are you two doing? Seeing Gravel rushing over, the bandit leader shouted at Gravel. Getting rid of evil for the people. Want to get rid of evil for the people? That depends on whether the sword in my hand agrees or not. The bandit leader mocked. Facing 5 armed bandits, Gravel told Tani not to attack and just follow behind to take care of the injured villagers. With a sprint, Gravel rode his tall horse and rushed in front of the bandits. With a swing of his sword, a bandit's head had already fallen to the ground. The remaining 4 bandits were taken aback, but they weren't intimidated at all. On the contrary, because of anger, they also swung their swords at Gravel. Facing 4 people at the same time, Gravel was a little panicked. But this did not affect his fighting strength. Under the threat of Gravel's cavalry, the 4 bandits had no room to resist. Divide and conquer. This was the only thought that flashed through Gravel's mind. Gravel increased his speed and left the bandits far behind. Suddenly, Gravel pulled the reins of his horse and rushed in the direction of the bandits. This trick was indeed effective. With his superb riding skills, Gravel cut down all the bandits. Gravel was merciful and did not hurt their vital parts. The remaining bandits knelt and begged Gravel to let them go. Gravel saw that one of the injured bandits was missing, and only 3 were left kneeling. At this time, Tani rode his horse and chased after the bandit leader, who escaped to Gravel's side. Sir, I caught the one who escaped. Tani happily said to Gravel. Well done. Gravel dismounted from his horse and walked to the bandit leader, whose hands were tied. Seeing Gravel walk over, the bandit leader remained silent. What the bandit leader did not expect was that Gravel would personally untie him. The bandit leader was speechless for a moment. I believe that you did not want to be a bandit from the moment you were born. Life must have forced you to do so I have decided to give you a chance to start over. The war has already made the people unable to make a living, so you should not add fuel to the fire. Just as Gravel untied the bandit leader, he noticed that there was a cross-shaped scar on the bandit leader's right arm. There is something I want to ask you. Gravel asked the bandit leader. What is it? Did you catch a merchant from Kellendal recently? I think so. He is locked up in our nest. Tell me in detail. All right. The bandit leader told Gravel the exact location of their nest. All right. You and your brothers can leave now. But don't let me find out that you are committing murder and arson again. The bandit leader immediately agreed and left the village with his 3 injured men. Gravel and Tani also packed up and prepared to leave for Vita Village. Hero, please stay. A few villagers took out the remaining food, fruits, and other items to thank Gravel for saving their lives. Old man, your village was just attacked by bandits. You need these more than we do now. Gravel said to the old village chief. Tani, take out 50 silver dragon coins and give it to the village chief. Gravel said to Tani. How can I do that? What is Benefactor doing? The old village chief hurriedly said. Village chief, don't worry about it. This is a small token of my appreciation. Take it and treat the injured villagers. Gravel said as he held the old man's hand. Benefactor, our village still has a dozen strong young men. They are willing to follow you. The old village chief expressed his gratitude. All right, don't worry and let them follow me. Gravel led the dozen strong young men to bid farewell to the villagers and headed towards the depths of the forest where the bandits were hiding. Chapter 54. Due to the terrain, Gravel had no choice but to dismount and walk on foot. Sir, do you think those bandits are lying to us? How could this godforsaken place be a bandit's lair? Lower your voice. Focus on the surroundings. After searching for a long time, Gravel began to want to give up. Everyone, drink some water and take a rest, Gravel said to the hired youths. At the same time, Gravel also took out a leather water skin and drank a few mouthfuls. Sir, I found something. Tawny ran over and whispered. What is it? It's a pile of burned firewood. It seems that this is really the bandits' hideout. Everyone, get up and prepare for battle. After seeing the pile of firewood, Gravel put away the leather water skin. The team of nearly 20 people began their search again. In this lush place, Gravel finally found the bandits' hideout. The bandits used wood to build some defensive measures and relied on some natural caves to resist the encirclement of the army. But Gravel was not a regular soldier. He was asked to come here by someone else. Gravel told the young man with the bow and arrow to lie in ambush. The rest of the people continued to follow Gravel. Gravel held a hunting bow and aimed at a bandit sentry who had not yet discovered them. Shio! An arrow shot into the bandit sentry's leg. That bandit sentry cried out in pain and loudly notified the other bandits. Not good, we've been exposed, Tawny said. Gravel did not say anything and led a dozen youths to charge at the bandits who ran out. Shio. Some of the bandits hiding in the dark used their bows to shoot down a few youths. Gravel was almost hit by an arrow as well. At the same time, in the hall of the cave where the bandit leader Horf lived, this tall, bald man was having sex with a few young women he had captured. At this moment of passion, a bandit ran in a panic. The robber paused for a moment when he saw the ecstatic scene before him. Report, a group of people is attacking our camp. The bandit reported truthfully. Horf looked at the bandit. His scarred face suddenly had a hint of viciousness. Pooh! Half picked up the broad axe beside him and chopped off the head of the bandit with a single blow. The girls who had been captured screamed in fright when they saw the bloody scene. You dare to disturb me? Only death awaits you. Horf did not wipe off the blood on his body. He put on his clothes and armor. Carrying his broad axe, he walked out of the hall. Seeing Gravel struggling to kill the bandits, Horf shouted, You brat again, go to hell. Horf said as he chopped down the young man who wanted to attack him with his axe. Come on, you bastards. Watch how I chop you to death. Horf brandished his axe and roared. Gravel noticed the crazy Horf, but there were not many young men around him. Sir, we only have 3 men left. Tell them to retreat. Retreat to the original place. Gravel used his long sword to block and said to Tawny. Gravel retreated with the few remaining men. Behind him were Horf and more than 10 fierce bandits. Now, Gravel finally led Horf's men to the archers who had been lying in ambush. Although Gravel's archers lacked training and their equipment was very old, but the element of surprise still caused Horf to suffer some losses. Facing the flying arrows, Horf's leg was hit by an arrow. The rest of the bandits were killed by the arrows. For a moment, Gravel's morale was greatly boosted. Gravel waved his long sword and led his men to attack. Looking at Gravel's menacing men, Horf's men's psychological defenses collapsed. In the end, besides those who fought to the death, many bandits chose to surrender. Those who did not surrender could only become ghosts under Gravel's sword. Where's Horf? Gravel asked Tawny, who was beside him. I don't know. He disappeared during the chaotic battle just now. Find him, we must find him, Gravel said resolutely. Just like that, except for a few who stayed behind to watch the captives, the rest followed Gravel to find Horf. He's injured by an arrow. He can't run far. Look for traces of blood on the ground, Gravel told his men. At this time, Horf, who was hiding in the gully, looked at the people who were looking for him. Horf tried his best to remember the characteristics of today's invaders. He swore in his heart that he would not rest in peace if he did not take revenge. In the end, he remembered the black shadow on the flag that Gravel brought. Black Eagle, sooner or later, you will submit to me. Half ran stealthily deeper into the forest. Gravel and his men searched for a long time, but they could not find Horf, so they had to give up. Back at the bandits' nest, Gravel led his men into the cave where Horf lived. The living conditions in the cave were complete. Even the lighting and ventilation were good. Gravel saw the young women in ragged clothes on Horf's bed. The women trembled in fear when they saw Gravel. Gravel found some clean clothes for them to change into. The women changed into them suspiciously, and only then did they believe that Gravel was a good person. Follow my men later. We will send you back to your home. The women were so excited that they could not speak. Perhaps they never expected to be able to return home and reunite with their families in this life. Gravel then led his men into the depths of the cave. He found a few people locked together in a dark place. Which one of you is Salem's brother? A young man in a tattered cotton robe was very excited. Me, I am. Gravel ordered his men to break down the prison door and release the people inside. Come with me. I will take you to see your brother. Gravel asked about the origins of the other people who were locked up. It turned out that they were all nearby merchants and farm owners. They were tied up on a mountain while bandits demanded ransom from their families. Gravel ordered his men to load all the valuable items onto the carriage and take them away. The weapons and armor that had been seized were also taken away. As for the young girl and the other hostages, Gravel let them go home. Gravel and his team took Horf's brother and set off for Pullen Harbor. The team walked for 2 days and 2 nights before finally returning to Pullen Harbor. Gravel and Tawny came to the place where they had agreed to meet Salem in advance, the Inferno Bar. At this time, the dock was still so prosperous. The craftsman's business was booming, and the market was bustling. There were also some immigrants from other places who seemed to want to try their luck here. Entering the bar, Gravel saw all kinds of people. There were strippers who danced wildly, notorious bandits and robbers nearby, mercenary leaders who were not afraid of death, and some slave traders who were seeking huge profits. In short, there were many people in the bar, and the slightest carelessness could lead to a fight. Gravel saw a middle-aged man sitting alone in the corner of the bar, drinking alone. Yes, this man was Salem. Chapter 55. Perhaps because there had been no news of his brother for so many days, Salem seemed very negative. Gravel walked over, but Salem didn't notice him. Why are you drinking alone here? My friend. Salem looked up and saw Gravel. He was so excited that he almost flipped the table over. If that had happened, it would have caused another bar scuffle. It's you? You're still alive? Salem said happily. Gravel smiled and called Tawny behind him to bring Salem's brother over. When Salem saw his brother, he immediately gave him the warmest hug. That brotherly love couldn't be better at this moment. Even Gravel, who was standing next to them, was moved by the scene in front of him. After a while, Salem turned around. Oh, sorry, I was too excited. Young man, I didn't expect that this impossible task would be completed. I thought that I would never see my brother again in my life. Well, since my brother is back, I will send him to the Empire's capital to study. Young man, these 200 silver dragon coins are my last savings. Take it. Gravel didn't refuse, but gladly accepted Salem's money. Remember when I told you that the robbers also had some accomplices in the city? I think I found out who the spy was. Who? It was the captain of a sentinel in the city. A few months ago, this captain saw that we merchants were making a lot of profits from the border trade and decided to borrow some money to start a caravan. Unfortunately, like many novices in business, he didn't realize that high returns meant high risks. He invested all his money in the most expensive trade, and his caravan was captured and plundered as a matter of course, and he lost everything. And then, you want to be a spy for the robbers? Yes, our captain of the Sentinel lost his morals in order to compensate for his loss. Now, in the German Empire, any captain of a Sentinel would actually inform the robbers to increase their income. But our captain decided to hire these bastards on a large scale. He brought these bastards into the town let them do whatever they wanted, and share the loot with them. Have you ever heard of cats and mice living together? Looks like things have gotten a little tricky. Gravel pondered for a moment. Fortunately, we still have some honest and kind companions who are paying attention to all of this. Do you have any specific plans? I want our Lord to pay attention to all of this. I gathered a small group of civilians. Some of them were my employees, while others were civilians who had lost loved ones to the bandits. We will rush to the captain's house and tie him up in front of the Lord. But we still need to find some bandits to prove it. And the best person to catch the bandits is you. We need you. Me? All right, I'm willing to give it a try. Gravel agreed, thinking that this could be considered as getting rid of evil for the people. Young man, I really didn't misjudge you. Salem grabbed the wine glass. After leaving the Inferno bar, Gravel and Tawny planned to capture the bandits in the city. These remaining bandits became the most powerful evidence to capture the Sentinel Captain. According to Salem's information, these bandits were on the street not far away, and Salem's people were also there to monitor them. Coming to the street, Gravel saw some young people who looked very nervous. These young people were Salem's men, and what Gravel had to do was to lead them to catch the bandits in the city. When Gravel passed by one of the young people, Gravel found a dagger and a stick hidden under his clothes, and the young man's eyes revealed fear, expectation, and pride. I really hope that the enemy will not be alerted by these two obvious flaws. Gravel secretly hoped. Tawny, how many bandits are there left? 10, Lord. Wrong, it's 12. Gravel gestured to Tawny. There were 2 more in the Inferno bar. Later, those 2 bandits will be handed over to you. But Lord, I believe in yourself. Gravel patted Tawny's shoulder. Okay, brothers, let's start. Gravel suddenly roared. The young people who were originally hesitant heard Gravel's order, and their attitudes suddenly became firm. Gravel rushed to the bandit he had been eyeing and killed him with a sword. When the other bandits saw this, they also unsheathed their swords. Thus, a battle between a righteous citizen and a black-hearted bandit was staged. Facing the bandits who killed people like flies, the citizens holding sticks were too weak. As expected, one of the robbers stabbed a citizen beside him with a knife. Blood flowed out of the citizen's body, and the citizen fell to the ground powerlessly. Such a young life had sacrificed his precious life for his ideals. Revenge for your family. Gravel roared angrily. Thinking of the hatred with the bandits in the past, the citizens also forgot their fear and bravely fought the bandits. With his superb swordsmanship, Gravel killed all 3 bandits around him. The remaining bandits fled in all directions, hiding in the narrow alleys of the town. In the end, they could only be caught one by the angry citizens. Gravel led his men to take the captured bandits to Salem. At the same time, Salem also led his men to capture the Sentinel Captain who had tipped them off. After a private interrogation, the Sentinel Captain confessed everything. It turned out that after the Sentinel Captain went bankrupt, he had met a bandit leader named Horf. The Sentinel Captain obtained a large sum of money by providing information to Horf. Horf's power was very strong in the small towns from Pullenport to Kellendale. Horf made friends with some people in the town to provide him with information. With reliable information, Horf would go on a rampage and loot without restraint. The 2 robberies of Gravel and Salem's brother were done by Horf and some of his spies. The supervisor at the dock and the Sentinel Captain were 1 or 2 of them. This so-called riot came to an end with the victory of the civilians. Not good. Gravel suddenly remembered that Tawny was still fighting with 2 bandits in the tavern. Gravel said goodbye to Salem and hurried into the tavern. Salem also had a lot of things to do, so he did not stop Gravel. When he arrived at the tavern, he saw a mess. Tawny had been knocked to the ground, his head and face covered in blood. Tawny, Gravel regretted it. Gravel ignored the expression of the bar owner and picked up Tawny, who was lying on the ground. At this time, 2 bandits hiding behind the door used wooden sticks to knock the unsuspecting Gravel to the ground. After that, the 2 bandits plundered Gravel's money and left the tavern, escaping without a trace. Chapter 56. When Gravel woke up, He found himself lying in an unfamiliar room. Tawny was lying on the bed next to him, and Tawny's wounds had been bandaged. Where am I now? This was perhaps the first reaction of most people. However, Gravel's first reaction was, "Where's my sword?" That was his ancestral treasure, and he could not lose it. Coincidentally, at this moment, the door was pushed open, and the merchant Salem came in. "You woke up. How did I get here? Where's my sword? I put it away for you." That day, after I brought people to explain to the Lord, things did not go well. I went to the bar to drink to relieve my boredom, and found you and Tawny lying on the ground. I brought you to my room and found someone to bandage you. Salem, thank you. You just said that things did not go well. Gravel, in this era full of war, the eyes of the nobles are always looking at other people's territories. As for the life and death of the people in his territory, he never cared about it. When I tied up the sentinel captain and the robbers in front of the Lord, he realized the seriousness of the problem. He thought that if the price was reasonable, the sentinel captain would also inform the enemy of the news in the city. He immediately ordered the sentinel captain and the robbers to be executed, and their bodies were hung on the city wall. They got what they deserved. But my friend, the Lord did not allow anyone to make an issue of his negligence. So I was also expelled from his territory by the Lord in the name of rebellion. This seems unfair. Fair? This is the German Empire, child. The lords do whatever they want, and we are wise to protect ourselves. He did not tie me up, but gave me time to sell my goods. He even let other merchants give me a fair price, and that was kind enough. Then what are your plans in the future? I want to organize a caravan and go to other places to buy pig iron. In any case, I'm a merchant. I roam the world, and the world is my home. A few days later, Gravel took Tawny, who had just recovered from his serious injuries, to bid farewell to the merchant Salem. They left Providence Harbor, a prosperous port city. After seeing all this, Gravel led his 20-odd subordinates towards the north of the empire. He didn't know why he wanted to return to his original place, but he felt like something was calling him. After the series of events, Gravel also had a certain understanding of the German Empire. The empire was a place where the strong preyed on the weak, and only the fittest survived. Here, as long as you have a strong army, your words carry weight. The king was just one of the more powerful lords. A country was nothing more than an alliance of nobles. The common people had no way of making a living, while the aristocrats were filthy rich. Fairness had to be fought for with fists. Bandits and robbers were rampant everywhere, but the king had repeatedly tolerated them. They only thought about how to expand their own interests and never thought about the civilians in the abyss of suffering. And the huge amount of taxes was like a heavy burden on the common people. The common people were angry, but they didn't dare to speak. What they needed was a hero who could lead them. Along the way, what Gravel saw, heard, and experienced deeply touched Gravel's heart. One day, I will put an end to this evil war. One day, the power of the common people will be higher than that of the king. Gravel swore in his heart. In the north of the empire, there was still an endless plain. But going further north, there was a mountain range that stretched between the heavens and the earth. Over the mountain range was the Northland. The Wilson Mountain Range, located in Northland, was a beautiful mountain range with beautiful mountains and rivers, with pleasant scenery. The Haya Castle at the foot of the Wilson Mountains was the destination of Gravel's trip. The Haya Castle was an important military fortress in the north of the empire. After a few days of travel, Gravel finally arrived. On the city wall, the guards wearing metal armor shone brightly under the sun. In the Haya Castle, fully armed soldiers could be seen everywhere. It seemed that any army that wanted to take over this place would have to pay the price in blood. At least, that was what Gravel thought. Gravel heard from the residents here that the person in charge of the Haya Castle was Count Steve. This man in his 50s was said to have taken over the entire Haya Castle by himself. Gravel really wanted to meet such a legendary hero. According to the rules of the Haya Castle, armed forces of any size were not allowed to enter the castle. So, there were many mercenaries stationed outside the castle. These mercenaries were waiting for a loophole in the war, because once there was a war, the king would spend a lot of money to hire them. and the Haya Castle happened to be a place where war happened frequently, so it was not surprising that there were so many mercenaries here. In fact, Gravel also wanted to try his luck here. Gravel let everyone set up camp outside the city. Now, Gravel had used the weapons and money seized from Horf to form a team of more than 100 people. Gravel's team consisted of experienced veterans and inexperienced recruits, well-equipped mercenaries, and villagers with wooden sticks. It could be said that there were both good and bad people mixed together. In terms of combat power, this team lacked formal training, and most of them were infantrymen, lacking basic cooperation. Gravel did not expect this team to do anything earth-shattering, only to be able to protect themselves in this chaotic world. In the built camp, Gravel had nothing to do, so he casually chatted with the soldiers. He found that a woman named Anna was very talented in fighting. This woman was good at archery and tracking, and was a good candidate to be a scout or a guide. Anna was hired by Gravel in the tavern when he passed by Kellendil. At that time, Gravel was drinking with Tawny in the tavern. A well-armed woman with an ordinary appearance caught Gravel's attention. After talking, Gravel learned that Anna had a weak father. Her father married her to a lazy drunkard. Because she could not stand her husband's domestic violence, Anna ran away from her husband. On a moonless night, she was caught by a group of bandits. Fortunately, the bandits did not do anything to her. What made Anna even happier was that one of the bandits was really good to her. That bandit taught Anna how to hunt and fight. But good things did not last long. That bandit was killed because of the jealousy of his companions. The bandit drove Anna away, and from then on, Anna wandered the world until she came to Kellendil. After a few days of understanding, Gravel found that Anna was a very strong girl. Although she looked ordinary, her role in the army was more useful than 10 beautiful vases. At night, a dense campfire rose around High Castle. The mercenaries used their unique way to spend a rare night by the campfire. "Sir, when are we going to enter the city?" Tawny asked Gravel. "No hurry. Tomorrow afternoon I will go with you to buy some supplies," Gravel replied. Chapter 57. After confronting the tiger for a short while, Gravel lost all his confidence. Gravel chose to run away, but the tiger pounced on him even faster. It seems that cowardice can sometimes harm a person. In fact, Gravel wanted to buy more time so that Darlena could escape further away. "Come on, you stupid tiger. Catch me if you have the guts," Gravel said as he ran. Although the tiger did not understand human language, it seemed to understand that the human in front of it was laughing at it. The tiger used all its strength and jumped towards Gravel. Gravel was caught off guard and was pressed to the ground by the tiger. "It's over." Gravel felt like his ribs were broken. The tiger's claws pressed on Gravel's body, and its mouth was only a few centimeters away from Gravel's face. "It seems that I will die here today." Gravel closed his eyes and waited for Azrael's arrival. Hearing the tiger's long roar, the birds in the forest were immediately frightened and scattered in all directions. However, when Gravel gave up resisting, something unexpected happened. "Hey, Gravel, you can't die yet." Darlena found a thick wooden stick and hit the tiger's body. The tiger groaned in pain and rolled down from Gravel's body. Gravel opened his eyes and saw that it was Darlena. "Quickly kill it with the dagger," Darlena shouted at Gravel. Gravel reacted, but his body was unable to move. Gravel struggled to throw the dagger at the injured tiger, but unfortunately, he missed. Although the tiger was injured, it did not hurt its vital parts. Looking at the dagger on the ground, Darlena quickly ran over. The tiger also turned around and rushed towards Darlena. Just as the tiger was about to pounce on Darlena, Darlena nimbly dodged. However, the tiger wasn't so lucky. It missed and was slashed by the dagger in Darlena's hand. After the tiger landed, it staggered. Darlena took advantage of this opportunity and stabbed the tiger's head with the dagger. After several stabs, the tiger finally fell to the ground unwillingly. Blood flowed from the tiger's body. Darlena's series of movements were so skillful and exquisite. Gravel heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this result. He even doubted that the girl who killed the tiger so skillfully was still the girl who was bullied in the pub. "Why did you come back?" Didn't you say that you won't abandon your brothers? I'm the same. I won't abandon my benefactor. Darlina smiled. Her smile was so pure and beautiful. How did you become so strong? I never said that I wasn't strong, but it was my first time killing Tiger. Gravel was speechless. Darlina came over and used her slender hand to help Gravel up. Cough, cough. Gravel felt a sharp pain in his chest. Are you hurt? It seems to be quite serious. I'm fine. Gravel stood up and was about to walk a few steps when he suddenly felt dizzy and fell to the ground. What should I do? Darlina was worried. In this desolate place, Darlina had no way to wake Gravel up. Helpless, Darlina had to use the surrounding branches to make a simple mat. Darlina put Gravel on the mat and dragged him to a place with people to seek help. On the other hand, Tawny was thinking of a way to sneak out of the city. Tawny was hiding in the cellar of an inn, so the city's patrols had not found Tawny yet. How can I escape? I have to quickly think of a way. Tawny thought to himself. At this time, Tawny heard someone walking towards the cellar. It was just a waiter from the inn who came to the cellar to get some vegetables. The young waiter went down into the dark cellar and suddenly had a dagger pressed against his back. Don't make a sound, or your little life will be over. Tawny pretended to be deep in order to scare the waiter. After following Gravel for so many days, Tawny had become somewhat heroic. Yes, may I ask what Sir wants? The waiter was so scared that his legs were trembling. Go get me some food, and don't tell anyone else that I am here. Yes, this little one understands. After a while, the waiter came to the cellar with a plate of leftovers. I'm sorry, hero. I only found this in the kitchen. The waiter handed the plate to Tawny, and Tawny began wolfing it down. Seeing Tawny wolfing it down, the waiter was shocked. Sir, eat slowly. I'll make more if it's not enough. After Tawny finished, he returned the plate to the waiter. Sir, you're not the one who ruined the Baron's plans yesterday, are you? Don't worry about that. Tell me what's the situation in the castle. Tawny didn't answer the waiter. Sir, the city's patrols are looking for the person they claim is the traitor. We all know that the person they're looking for is the one who ruined Baron Sadak's plans at the bar yesterday. That's enough. You should go about your business. Thank you for the meal. I'll reward you handsomely next time. No problem, sir. Tony took advantage of the time when the assistant left the cellar, and he also set off to hide elsewhere. There was no one he could trust here. As for Anna and the others, they disguised themselves and entered the castle to gather information. Anna learned that Tawny hadn't been caught yet. However, they couldn't contact Tawny. Anna and two other brothers entered the tavern. The bar owner was still as calm as ever, making it hard for people to fathom him. Anna, what should we do next? One of the brothers asked in a small voice. We'll wait and see. As soon as Tawny shows up, we'll get him out of the castle, Anna said to the waiter beside her. At that moment, in the main hall of Haya Castle, Baron Sadak was sitting on a chair with his father, Count Steve, by his side. Father, you have to avenge our son. That bastard wants to end our family's bloodline. Son, it's not that I want to criticize you. I don't care about what you've done before, but you've gone too far this time. Now that the whole castle knows about you, how am I supposed to show my face as the commander? Father, you only know your prestige. Don't you care about our son's happiness? I want that woman and that man to die a painful death. Sigh. Count Steve sighed. He paced around the room and decided to help his son find Gravel and Darlina. I'm only lending you these 100 heavy cavalry. You'll have to pay them back after you find them. You're still so calculative with your own son. At the same time, Sadak thought to himself, just you wait, you brat who ruined my plans. I'll make you wish you were dead. Chapter 58. Darlina dragged the injured Gravel into the depths of the valley. Darlina felt dizzy as she hadn't eaten anything for a long time. Suddenly, Darlina's legs gave way and she fell to the ground. A young man in the mountains saw this scene. He was a hunter who had come to search for prey. The young man quickly ran over and touched Gravel and Darlina to see if they were still breathing. After knowing that Gravel and Darlina were still alive, the young man immediately turned and left. After a short while, 5 or 6 young men followed the young hunter to Darlena's side with a stretcher. They put Darlena and Gravel on 2 stretchers, and the young men carried the stretchers back to their village. The village they were going to was a small one located in the valley. As soon as the young men carrying the stretchers entered the village, they immediately attracted the attention of many villagers. Everyone brought the 2 of them to an old doctor. The old doctor checked Darlena and Gravel's condition. He said to the person next to him, "That woman is just lacking in nutrition. She'll be fine after feeding her some sugar water. This man has 2 broken ribs in his chest. I need to perform some surgery on him." The old doctor ordered the others to prepare the medicine and items he needed. After a short while, the villagers prepared the things he needed. The old doctor focused on operating on Gravel and cleaning the wound. After more than 3 hours of surgery, the old doctor wiped the sweat on his forehead and walked out of the room. "I've never seen a person with such tenacious vitality." The old doctor said only one sentence. After a few days, Gravel gradually recovered. He could do some simple work in the field, and Darlena had already become friends with the villagers. Everyone in the village liked the beautiful and kind Darlena very much, and they were also impressed by David's superb martial arts skills. They learned from the villagers that the village built in the valley was called the refugee camp. Everyone who lived in this mountain village had an unforgettable and sad past. The reason why this valley was called the refugee camp was because the people here had been persecuted by the nobles. In the camp, the nobles were beyond their reach, which gave these poor people a place to rest. After telling the village chief their reason for coming here, the chief temporarily agreed to let Gravel and Darlena stay in the village. The leader of the village was a tall and strong man named Mullen. He was young and had great leadership skills. Just like that, Darlena and Gravel stayed in the refugee camp for half a month. Until one day, the young hunter in the village, the one who saved Gravel, saved 2 people again. The 2 people the young hunter saved this time were saved at the foot of Wilson Mountain. That day, the hunter went hunting as usual, but he heard a battle cry in the silence of the forest. A large group of Imperial soldiers were chasing after the 2 of them. These 2 people, one was a dark-skinned woman, and the other was a thin man. These 2 people were covered in blood, and it was impossible to tell if it was their own or the enemy's. In short, seeing this scene, the hunter couldn't leave them to die, because the hunter himself had a blood feud with the Empire. The hunter knocked an arrow and shot down an Imperial soldier with a single arrow. However, the Imperial soldiers didn't know where the enemy was and shot at them. The 2 people who were chased by the soldiers to the point of despair suddenly felt full of strength. They waved the sticks in their hands and rushed at the Imperial soldiers behind them. In just a few minutes, more than 10 Imperial soldiers had died under the hunter's arrows. When the other Imperial soldiers saw the enemy's reinforcements arrive, they all scattered. They escaped from Wilson Mountain Forest and ran in the direction of High Castle. Seeing the pursuers retreat, the 2 people happily high-fived to celebrate. At this time, the hunter hiding in the depths of the forest came out. He thought for a moment, "Isn't the enemy of an enemy a friend? Hello, I'm Bethman. Hello, I'm Tani. Thank you for saving us just now. I'm Anna." Anna said, "Oh, why were you chased by the Imperial soldiers?" Bethman asked. This, seeing that Anna and Tani didn't want to answer, Bethman didn't ask. "If you don't mind, why don't you come to my place and sit?" Bethman politely invited. Anna and Tani looked at each other and finally decided to go with Bethman. Bethman took Anna and Tani to the refugee camp. At that time, Gravel's injury had just recovered. Darlena took care of Gravel every day, which made Gravel feel embarrassed. Bethman took Anna and Tani directly to Mullen. After Mullen heard about their background, he agreed to let them stay in Wilson Refuge. After arranging a place for Anna and Tani to stay, Bethman also went to do his own things. Tani left the room alone and relaxed in the camp. "Where's the master right now? I don't know what to do next." Tani frowned. Gravel was also tired of staying in the room, so Darlena helped him out of the wooden house. Enjoying the cool autumn wind, Gravel felt much better. At this time, Tani saw Gravel accompanied by Darlena. "Master, Tawny was so excited that he didn't know what to say. "I'm Tawny, master." He couldn't care less and shouted, "Tawny." Gravel turned around and looked at Tawny with joy. "I'm not hallucinating, am I?" Tawny happily pinched himself, but it still hurt. "Tawny, how did you find this place?" Tawny thought about what happened before, and his heart felt heavy. At that time, he was still in Haya Castle, and the castle was full of people trying to capture him. With no one to rely on, Tawny fled to the tavern. After the tavern owner saw Tawny, he promised to protect Tawny's safety. Tawny didn't think too much at the time, but after a while, the Imperial soldiers surrounded the tavern. Anna, who was still in the tavern at the time, noticed that something was wrong and guessed that Tawny might also be in the tavern. Sure enough, Tawny was taken out of the tavern by the soldiers. Tawny cursed the tavern owner for being a shameless villain. Anna and two other brothers immediately rushed up and clashed with the Imperial soldiers. In the conflict, the two brothers who came with Anna were killed. Anna and Tawny fled Haya Castle with great difficulty, with a large number of soldiers chasing after them. They followed Gravel's escape route and fled to the Wilson Mountains. After that, the scene of Bethman saving them happened. Gravel held Tawny's hand and said, "It's good that you're back." "Master, what about you? How did you get hurt?" Gravel also told Tawny what happened to him. Just like that, the two chatted until late at night. Gravel drank some wine behind Darlena's back, even though the doctor and Darlena didn't allow him to do so. "What about our mercenary team? Sadak won't let them go." "Don't worry, master. He won't find them. I'll definitely teach that Sadak a lesson. Just wait and see, Tawny." "Master, I'll support you no matter what." That night, Gravel made an important decision in his life. Chapter 59. There's a lot of injustice and corruption on the continent of Hadirado. The poor became sheep at the mercy of the nobles. Gravel thought about it for a long time. He knew that if he wanted the poor to live a good life, he would have to rely on his sword and the army. Only when you're strong enough will your words have weight. Fighting against tyrannical power requires courage and determination. After a night of thinking, Gravel decided to ask the camp leader for help. The next day, Gravel and Tawny went to the camp leader's tent. Inside the tent, a muscular man in a black vest was reading a book. The man's muscles were clearly visible, and his body proportions were perfect. Seeing Gravel and Tawny walk over, the man put down the book. "Why are you looking for me?" "Leader, we don't want to talk to you." "Oh." The muscular man showed some interest in Gravel. At least he was willing to listen to Gravel. "First, I have to thank you for taking us in. Secondly, I want to say that I have a way to make our refugee camp stronger." "What did you do before, young man?" "I was a mercenary captain." "Then what method do you have to increase our camp strength?" "Rob the military's transport team." "What? You're too brave." "High risk also means high reward." Gravel told the muscular man about some successful historical examples. The man stroked his beard and thought, "You're asking us to hit a rock with an egg. Besides, how can I believe you? You've only been here for half a month." The man said after a while, "Sir, you cannot believe me, but you have to believe your subordinates. Which one of them hasn't been bullied and destroyed by the nobles? I think the reason why you set up such a camp is to benefit the people of this area. Since you're asking for the people's lives, why not let more people benefit?" The man began to look at the ordinary-looking young man in front of him in a new light. He pulled out the sword on the table. "This will cause many people to die, but for more people to live a good life, I'm willing to give it a try. Young man, can you give me some better suggestions?" "Yes, I have some more specific plans. Please go ahead." The leader's attitude had obviously become much better, even somewhat cordial. Gravel and the leader talked for an entire afternoon. During this time, Tawny stayed by Gravel's side. The next day, the originally peaceful and quiet valley began to bustle with activity. Everyone in the camp who could wield a weapon was called to Leader Mo Lin's side. The autumn wind in the Wilson forest carried a faint, earthy fragrance, without the slightest hint of coolness. Leader Molin stood on top of a high platform, looking down at the poor people who trusted him. "Brothers and sisters, I have gathered all of you here today to announce two things. The first thing is that the 4 people behind me will officially become members of our refugee camp. Molin introduced Gravel and the others to the people below the stage. The second thing is that from today onwards, we will be completely at odds with the nobles of the German Empire. We will no longer be like before, only hiding in the valley. We will give these ruthless German nobles a heavy blow. The glory of our Wilson Forest will shine on every piece of land in the Northland. When they heard Molin announce the second thing, the people below were in an uproar. There were many discussions. Some expressed their approval, some were hesitant, and some were resolute in their opposition. Seeing the attitudes of the people below, Molin's attitude was very firm. Most people's attitudes were actually hesitant because they were afraid. They did not dare to resist the tyrannical power. After the gathering, Molin assigned the people below to their respective positions. Gravel followed Molin to the temporary command tent. Gravel, although my people have agreed to resist the tyranny of the Empire, they are not united. When the time comes, there will be very few people who will truly follow us. Molin and Gravel sat facing each other at the table. Lord Molin, those people are hesitating because they are afraid that if we fail, their lives will be in danger. What we need the most now is a victory, so our first battle is very important. In this battle, we need to give those who join us enough confidence, and also spread the name of our Wilson Forest. I know that our first battle is very important, but where should we start? Lord Molin, I can ask around Seaside Castle to see if there are any Empire transport caravans passing by recently. I can also bring my mercenaries to the valley while I'm at it. Gravel, I believe in you. Molin patted Gravel's shoulder. After leaving Molin's tent, Gravel found Tawny. After telling Tawny the specific plan, the two of them simply packed their luggage. Then, the two of them left the refugee camp and rushed to the outskirts of Seaside Castle. Outside the city, there was still an endless stretch of camps. As far as the eye could see, there were mercenaries' tents everywhere. It's the Empire's regular army, Lord, Tawny whispered to Gravel. Looks like they've tightened their management of the outskirts of the city. We have to be careful. Gravel pulled down the black hood on his head and lowered his head slightly to avoid the patrolling Empire's regular army. After arriving at the mercenary camp outside the city, Gravel and Tawny entered the tent. Due to Gravel's departure, many of the mercenaries had left, and there were only about 40 of them left. These 40 people had a good relationship with Gravel and were very loyal. Among them was a middle-aged uncle called Hyol. Hyol was usually in charge of the meals of these people who stayed behind, and was also in charge of taking care of Gravel's property. When Gravel saw Hyol offer up his ancestral longsword with both hands, he couldn't help but feel a trace of excitement in his heart. Hyol, thank you so much. You're too polite, Lord. I'm just a middle-aged man with no one to rely on. If it weren't for Lord's employment, how would I survive? All right, you'll follow me from now on. I'll pay you double. By the way, have you heard any news from the military recently? Lord, I heard that a batch of important goods will be shipped to Seaside Castle. It will probably arrive in 2 days. All right, I got it. Pass down the order. We'll leave this place in the dark. Yes, Lord. Then Gravel handed the flag with the black eagle pattern to Tawny. Take it. It will be the soul of our group. Don't worry, Lord. Chapter 60. Hyol relayed Gravel's orders to his subordinates, and they began to pack up. At that moment, within a luxurious room, Master, we've investigated thoroughly. Speak. Where are they? Of the two people in the room, one was the perverted Baron Sadak, and the other was his informant. Whenever Baron Sadak thought of Gravel who ruined his plans at the tavern, he was so angry he wanted to eat his flesh and skin. Ever since Gravel kicked him in the groin, he couldn't act like a man anymore. Master, according to our investigations, that brat is currently in the mercenary camp outside the castle. All right, I won't let you escape this time. Don't let me catch you. If I do, I'll make sure you're in so much pain you'll wish you were dead. As night fell, Gravel's men finished packing and planned to leave the castle under the cover of the night. While the patrols outside the castle were changing shifts, Gravel's men snuck out of the camp. Just as they were about to enter the forest, many Imperial soldiers rushed out. They each held a torch and lit up the night. There were around 200 of them, and Gravel's men couldn't deal with them at all. "Capture him alive," the Imperial officer in the lead shouted. Faced with the ferocious Imperial soldiers, Gravel didn't choose to face them head-on. Instead, he had his men scatter and hide in the forest. Thus, Gravel's men split into groups of 3 to 5 and fought against the Imperial soldiers. Just like that, the 200 or so regular army of the Empire was split up. While Gravel's men couldn't compare to the Imperial soldiers in terms of technique and equipment, they weren't inferior in the slightest. Gravel, Tawny, Highbull, and the rest gathered together and fought as they retreated. As they fought, Gravel noticed that there were fewer and fewer people following them. Gravel brandished his sword and fought against the 30 or so Imperial soldiers surrounding him. One of the soldiers had planned to ambush Gravel from behind, but Gravel reacted in time and killed him with a single slash of his sword. At the same time, a crossbow arrow shot out of nowhere and streaked across Gravel's arm. Gravel held his bleeding arm and retreated as he fought. Tawny also brandished his short sword to protect Gravel. Seeing his men fall one by one, Gravel felt very uncomfortable. At the same time, the situation at Highbull was not looking good. Highbull and the other brother Gravel were surrounded by 4 Imperial soldiers, but Highbull wasn't good at fighting. "No, I have to save Highbull." Gravel endured the pain from his wound and slashed at one of the soldiers with his sword. At this moment, Mullen arrived with reinforcements. It turned out that ever since Gravel left the valley, Mullen had sent someone to guard the valley. Merlin sent someone to stand guard in the forest and inform him immediately if there was any movement from Gravel. Seeing that Mullen had brought reinforcements, Gravel and his men's morale soared. After dealing with the soldiers surrounding Highbull, Gravel ran to meet up with Mullen. "Brother, I brought 800 men to save you," Mullen shouted. His voice traveled through the forest, thick and powerful. The leading Imperial officer was stunned by the sudden appearance of this tall and burly man. He actually ordered the remaining 100 or so Imperial soldiers to retreat. "Sir Mullen, you really brought 800 men? I was just scaring them." Mullen smiled. In fact, Mullen had brought everyone in the camp who could fight. Although there were only 300 of them and their equipment was uneven, it was enough to give the Imperial soldiers a hard time. Just like that, the farce of 300 farmers chasing after 100 Imperial soldiers played out in the forest. The Imperial soldiers abandoned their armor and fled the Wilson Mountains in a sorry state under the pursuit of the men led by Mullen. Mullen didn't order his men to chase them out of the forest and instead ordered them to bring the abandoned equipment to the refugee camp. The farmers and even the corpses of the Imperial soldiers were stripped clean. The farmers happily returned to the refugee camp with the equipment, while Mullen and Gravel followed behind them. "Sir Mullen, you've come at the right time." And now we have the equipment to fight against the Empire." Mullen laughed heartily. "When I went down the mountain this time, I heard that there will be an Imperial transport team passing through Seaside Castle in 2 days." "Really? That's great news." After returning to the camp, Gravel and Mullen ordered people to prepare for the operation in 2 days. On the other hand, Mullen had Bethman train the farmers in Wilson Mountains how to use weapons. 2 days later, the air was filled with thick fog. About 400 people were waiting quietly in Wilson's forest, waiting for the Empire's transport team to come to their doorstep. "Sir Mullen, today's weather is very unfavorable for us," Gravel said to Mullen beside him. "Gravel, do you have any ideas?" "I haven't thought of one yet. I have a good idea." Mullen pretended to smile mysteriously. "What method?" Gravel was curious. What good idea could the tall man in front of him have? "You'll know when the time comes." At the foot of Wilson Mountains, a group of fully armed men and horses was passing by. The leader of this group of people was a man wearing mail armor and riding a warhorse. This man had a full beard and carried a crescent axe on his back, looking very domineering. At this time, a sentry who had gone to scout ahead came back to report to this man. "No ambush," the man asked after hearing the sentry's report. "It's good that there's no ambush, but everyone still needs to be on high alert. Today's fog is very thick. Anything can happen." After the man finished speaking, he thought to himself, I hope nothing happens this time. If something happens, I won't be able to protect my little life. Sigh, who told the escorts to be so important this time? There were about 200 Imperial soldiers in charge of escorting the goods, all of whom were the elites of the army. They tried their best to speed through the foot of Wilson Mountains, because the probability of something happening here was very high. Everyone, speed up, don't get separated, the herald shouted. In such a thick fog, the horses carrying the goods were reluctantly driven away by the soldiers. Suddenly, a few spots of light lit up in front. The leader's heart suddenly thumped, cold sweat seeping out his forehead. Ambush! The soldier in front suddenly shouted, and then a flying axe hit the soldier in the face. The fire suddenly came closer, and the leader saw the bandits on horses. Protect the goods, prepare to meet the enemy, the man shouted. Chapter 61. The Imperial soldiers got into formation and formed a circle with shields to protect the goods. However, these bandits were too fast. In the blink of an eye, they rushed into the defensive circle of the Imperial soldiers. Because this group of Imperial soldiers was not equipped with many spears, they were not very good at dealing with mounted bandits. Cut the ropes, the tall bandit leader ordered. After receiving the order, the bandits threw their torches at the Imperial soldiers and the workhorses. The workhorses and men were frightened, and the Imperial soldiers' formation was immediately disrupted. The Imperial knights at the back could not stand it anymore. They urged their horses to chase after the bandits. However, the bandits shouted at each other and ran into the dense forest. Don't chase. Come back. The leading officer suddenly realized that this was the enemy's plan to lure the enemy away from the mountain. However, the knights did not listen to his orders at all. They chased after the bandits into the forest. When the knights ran into the dense forest, they were separated from each other. In addition to the fog, they could only fight on their own. Most of them were not familiar with the terrain, so they lost their way in the forest. However, they did not know how many arrows and traps were waiting for them. Only death awaited them. On the transport team's side, after losing the support of the knights, the leading officer became more cautious. The reins of the horses were cut by the bandits. Even the horses were scared away. The transport team could only stop moving for a while. The leader of the group held a crescent axe in his hand and observed the surrounding movements with rapt attention. At this time, the fog was gradually dissipating. The heavens are helping us, the leading officer thought to himself. Tani, it's our turn, Gravel said. In an instant, more than 200 arrows were shot at the transport team. However, most of them were blocked by the Imperial soldiers' shields. We can't, sir, Tani said. Let's go, brothers. Gravel did not care so much. The bandits are coming again, the Imperial soldiers shouted. Get into formation. Crossbowmen, get ready. The leading officer ordered. The commander of the Imperial transport team ordered the crossbowmen to get ready to shoot at Gravel and the other so-called bandits at any time. On the other hand, Gravel didn't let him and his men die in vain. Instead, he had the archers shoot at the Imperial soldiers. While Gravel was in a standoff with the Imperial soldiers, Darlena arrived with a group of people. These people were all women, and under Darlena's training, they were all good at using bows and arrows. Tell your men to act according to the plan, Gravel said to Darlena sternly. But I'm worried about you. Hurry up and complete your mission. Don't delay the overall situation because of you. Well, take care of yourself. Darlena said with a trace of reluctance. Let's go, sisters. Follow me. Darlena led the female archers away from Gravel. At this time, the commander of the transport team was very anxious. On one hand, he was worried about the Imperial knights chasing after the bandits. On the other hand, he was worried about whether the men he had secretly sent out to call for reinforcements would be able to do so. Now that the horses pulling the goods were gone, the entire transport team was paralyzed here. If the reinforcements didn't come, he could only choose to fight to the death with those cunning bandits. On the other hand, the Imperial knights chasing into the forest didn't find the bandits even after circling around for a long time. Although the fog was a lot thinner now, they still found themselves lost in the dense forest. Suddenly, a knight's warhorse accidentally tripped over a hidden rope, and the surrounding traps were triggered. Some of the knights were caught in the nets falling from the sky. Some were stabbed to death by the thorns buried in the ground, and some were directly smashed off their horses by huge rocks. Just like that, the knights chasing after the bandits were separated and eliminated by Molin's men. After eliminating this group of elite Imperial knights, Molin immediately led his men to reinforce Gravel and the others. The Imperial commander, who was prepared to wait for reinforcements, was shocked when Molin and the others appeared from behind him. Although this commander looked very tough, he was actually very weak inside. The commander and his men immediately panicked because it was very difficult for infantry to fight against cavalry. Molin's men were all experienced warriors, and each of them was riding a horse. Molin and the others were light cavalry because they didn't wear any armor. When Gravel saw Molin and his men rushing over, he immediately ordered everyone to charge out of the forest. The Imperial crossbowmen who were prepared to shoot were defeated by Molin's cavalry charge. These crossbowmen were scattered in all directions, unable to protect their left and right. In addition, Gravel and the rest of the infantry rushed over. In an instant, the entire battlefield became a sea of blood. The two sides that were originally in a stalemate were now in a one-sided situation. The Imperial commander commanded his men to fight while retreating alone. Finally, he ordered the troops to abandon the goods they were escorting. Instead, he ordered all the soldiers to escape with him in the direction of Haya Castle. Molin's men were just about to chase after the scattered soldiers. "Don't chase," Molin shouted. His men looked at Molin, clearly confused. "Don't chase a cornered enemy." Molin looked at his men's puzzled eyes and said with a smile. His men followed Molin's orders and transported the Imperial goods to the refugee camp on horses. On the Imperial commander's side, he led the remaining 50 or so men and ran towards the castle. "It's over this time. The goods this time are too valuable, that's..." Just thinking about it made the commander shiver. Just as the commander was worrying about this accident, a whistling arrow was placed in front of his horse. The commander's horse was startled and suddenly shook, causing the commander to fall off his horse. The bearded commander fell off his horse and immediately took out the crescent blade axe from his back. The remaining Imperial soldiers also regrouped into a defensive formation. Immediately after, the person hiding in the forest fired a second arrow. This arrow was not fired by anyone else but Darlena. Darlena looked at the Imperial commander as she knocked her bow. Whoosh! The arrow pierced through the air, whistling towards the commander. The arrow landed squarely on the helmet of the Imperial commander. Seeing the helmet rolling on the ground, a trace of cold sweat dripped from the commander's forehead. "You're still wondering why the reinforcements haven't arrived yet, aren't you?" Darlena walked out of the forest and walked in front of the commander. Then, Darlena waved her hand towards the forest. Several women with longbows on their backs escorted the 3 tied-up Imperial soldiers out. When the Imperial commander saw the 3 soldiers, he immediately understood. These bandits were not ordinary. The commander couldn't help but admire them, but it was too late. Chapter 62. The commander realized that he had been fooled by these bandits from the very beginning. First of all, these bandits already knew about his escort operation. Then, they made use of the foggy weather to lure the elite knights into the dense forest. Secondly, they had set up an ambush at the entrance to Haya Castle, making it impossible for him to call for reinforcements. He couldn't even escape now. Just thinking about this sent a chill down the commander's spine. Now, the commander could only resign himself to fate. Listen, you only have 2 options now. The first option is to fight to the death, which will result in your entire army being wiped out. The second option is to leave all the soldiers behind and leave alone. Darlena didn't give the commander too much time to think. The commander glanced at the dense forest and thought about the actions of these bandits. These bandits are too powerful. I wonder what other tricks they have up their sleeves for me. The commander thought to himself, "All right, I'll choose the second option." Let me go, and you could do whatever you want with these soldiers." The commander said. The remaining soldiers all looked at their commander. They didn't expect their commander to betray his subordinates in order to escape. Most of the soldiers' hearts sank, and they lost their will to fight. "You can go now." Darlena waved her hand towards the dense forest, indicating for the commander to leave. The commander ran towards Haya Castle, not even bothering to pick up his helmet and weapon that had fallen to the ground. Darlena turned around and spoke to the remaining Nogran soldiers. "You saw it too. Your commander didn't care about your lives in order to escape. Now, the nobles are profiting so much that the people have no way to make a living. If you still have a conscience, don't help the evildoers. Those who want to join us can stay. Those who don't can leave behind your equipment." The moment these words were spoken, the Imperial soldiers below looked at each other in bewilderment. Then, a tall Northland soldier shouted that he was willing to join. After a while, the other Northland soldiers also expressed their willingness to join Darlena and the others. Only 7 Derman soldiers took off their armor and wanted to leave. Darlena didn't stop them and let them go. Just like that, the people returned to the refugee camp with their spoils of war. "Lord Merlin, your plan this time was too successful," Gravel said happily. Everyone cooperated well. Mullen appeared to be very modest. "Sir, can you guess what goods we've robbed this time?" At this moment, Bethman ran over happily and said, "What is it?" "Gold. 8 full chests of gold. It seems like we've intercepted the supplies that were being transported to Haya Castle. The military won't let it go so easily," Gravel said. "Lord Merlin, what should we do next?" Bethman asked. "What we need to do next is," Merlin said thoughtfully, "give the gold to the poor." Gravel and Bethman said in unison, looking at Mullen in confusion. "What? Isn't this operation to rob the rich and give to the poor?" Mullen also had some doubts. It's for the poor, but these are 8 boxes of gold." Bethman emphasized the word gold on purpose. "Yes, we'll keep 4 boxes. The rest will be given to the poor villagers nearby," Mullen said firmly. "All right, Lord Merlin. Since you're so insistent, we'll do as you say." Gravel thought for a while and said to Mullen. "Then let's do it," Bethman said. After saying that, Bethman immediately went to do it. He called a few of his brothers on horseback, and each of them took some gold and rushed towards the village near the camp. After passing through the dense forest, Bethman and the others saw a village not far away. "Look, that's the giant bear village. I stayed there for a while when I was young," one of them said loudly. "Later we'll be able to see the happy faces of the people there when they get the gold." Bethman clamped his legs and rode towards the village. The rest of the people also followed Bethman and rode towards the village. "Bethman, look, it seems like there's a big fire there." Bethman stopped his horse and looked towards the place where Gravel was pointing. Indeed, there was thick smoke rising from there. "It looks like bandits. Gravel brothers, be alert," Bethman said. The few Gravel brothers pulled out their weapons. "Brothers, let's go." Bethman and the others were like lightning streaking across the lush grassland, catching the bandits unprepared. These bandits were just a group of scattered bandits. Altogether, there were only 20 or so people. Their equipment was crude, and their clothes were covered in dust. How could these bandits be a match for Bethman and the others who were able to repel the Empire's army? Except for a few bandits who were killed or ran away, the rest of the bandits all knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. "Where did you come from?" Bethman dismounted from his horse and patted the dust off his clothes while asking one of the bandits who was kneeling on the ground. "Lord, we came from Haya Castle. We were originally ordinary farmers, but we couldn't bear the heavy taxes of the nobles, so we ran out to become bandits. Lord, this is our first offense. Please spare us." The bandit begged. Bethman carefully sized up the bandit. The bandit had rough skin and his hands were full of calluses. With one look, one could tell that he often worked in the fields. "All right." Just as Bethman was about to let the bandits go, an old man quickly walked out from the dilapidated house. The old man's steps were unsteady, but he still walked quickly, as if he was afraid of missing something. "You can't let them go, my daughter," the old man said with difficulty, his eyes filled with tears. "Old man, please speak slowly." Bethman ran over to support the old man. My daughter was killed by those bandits. The old man couldn't help but cry. He tightly held Bethman's hand, as if he was grabbing onto a life-saving straw. Old man, please speak slowly. I will uphold justice for you. My lord, my daughter was defiled by these bandits. The old man finally managed to hold himself back and finish his sentence. My lord, please spare us. We were blinded by lust. We know our wrongs. The bandits knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Bethman originally wanted to give these bandits a chance, but since they had committed such a crime, they couldn't blame Bethman. Nail them on the wooden stakes, use a dagger to cut off their tendons, and let them feed to the crows. Bethman ordered, Lord, we won't dare to do it again. Please spare us. Bethman no longer paid attention to the bandits, but went to comfort the old man and his daughter and gave them a bag of gold. Chapter 63. The old man was very grateful and held Bethman's hand with tears in his eyes. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that someone would stand up for a commoner like him and even give him gold. Soon, the bandits were tied up and nailed to wooden stakes by Bethman's brothers. They were beaten until they were on the brink of death. After that, Bethman took his men to the other villages to distribute the gold. The villagers treated Bethman and the others with respect and treated them like messengers sent by the gods. Seeing the joy on the villagers' faces, Bethman finally understood why Merlin had asked him to do that. Brother Bethman, I feel like we've done a good deed, one of the brothers said. The money was earned by the nobles from exploiting the commoners. We're just returning it to its rightful owner. At the same time, in the main hall of Haya Castle, trash, a bunch of trash, Count Steve said angrily as he grabbed the collar of the commander that Darlena had released. Yes, sir. The commander's face was pale with fright. From today onwards, you're demoted to second lieutenant. Report to the infantry division immediately. Steve couldn't be bothered to deal with the commander anymore. 8 chests of gold. That idiot actually let them fall into the hands of bandits. Son, find out which bandits are so bold as to target my troops' pay. I won't let them get away with it, Steve said to Baron Sadak, who was standing beside him. Yes, father. After the first victory, Merlin's trust in Gravel increased a lot. At the same time, he appreciated the young man. Gravel, we've robbed the Empire's army of their pay. They won't let us off easily. What should we do next? Merlin asked Gravel. Merlin, we'll distribute the gold to the villagers. They'll definitely respond to us. We'll then be able to recruit more soldiers to strengthen our forces. I'll leave that to you. More than a month had passed, and the cold winter gradually faded away. What came along was the warm spring and blooming flowers. The refugee camp was full of life. Everyone was busy with their own things. In the past month or so, the refugee camp had undergone a lot of changes. First, the refugee camp was renamed to Wilson's Resistance Army Camp. The Wilson Resistance Army was made up of the original armed members of the camp and the villagers who came to seek refuge. They built fences and gates and other defensive structures around the camp. They also set up sentries and watchtowers in places where the enemy might attack. They also buried many traps. At the same time, the elderly, women, and children in the camp were responsible for developing handicrafts and farming. This way, all the men could become warriors and receive specialized training. Furthermore, Gravel had also reorganized the Wilson Resistance Army according to the Empire's official army. Just like that, under the leadership of Gravel and Merlin, the originally disorganized villagers were reorganized into an organized and disciplined army. Due to Bethman's gold distribution operation, the Wilson Resistance Army's reputation had spread far and wide in the surrounding villages. Many ambitious youths and peasants who were oppressed by the nobles joined Wilson's Resistance Army. In short, after Gravel's reform, the Wilson Resistance Army camp had undergone earth-shaking changes. Now, there were about 1,500 infantrymen, 300 archers, and 200 cavalrymen in the camp. The food stored in the camp was enough to feed them for a year. It could be said that the strength of the resistance army was the strongest in the Northland area. After everyone's discussion, they recommended Merlin as the marshal of the Wilson Resistance Army, Gravel as the general of the Resistance Army, and Bethman as the deputy general. The act of the Wilson Resistance Army occupying the mountain attracted the attention of the upper nobles of the empire. They thought that Merlin's behavior would lead others to follow suit, which would cause the nobles to suffer losses. Therefore, several nobles ordered Count Steve to immediately lead the army to encircle the group of bandits. This group of bandits robbed my army's pay and dared to openly occupy the mountain. There's also a boy among them who made my son suffer such a thing. This is an irreconcilable grudge. Count Steve was overjoyed when he received the secret order from the Empire's royal family. Not only did the Empire's royal family send a secret order, but they also sent an infantry regiment of about 800 men as reinforcements to cooperate with Count Steve's operation. Wilson was not idle either. From a news sent back by the spies planted in various places, Merlin and the others knew about the encirclement plan, so they began to prepare for the battle. The Resistance Army's camp was bustling with activity as the soldiers carried out their training meticulously. In the past few days, Gravel had led the newly formed cavalrymen to rob the nearby Empire's caravans. Even Tani, who did not like to practice martial arts, had recently strengthened his training in throwing knives. 3 days later, before the early morning fog had dispersed, the dull sound of a horn cut through the silence of the morning. A sentinel standing on the watchtower of Haya Castle saw a group of about 800 soldiers of the Empire's infantry marching in the direction of their castle in the distance. They were disciplined, and their pace was neat. "Quick, report to the captain that an army is approaching the castle." The sentinel asked his companion to go forward and report to the officer. "Open the gates." After a while, the man said to the sentinel with the officer's order. With a creak, the heavy city gate slowly opened. The 800 soldiers of the Empire's infantry regiment walked into the castle under the lead of the officer in charge. Count Steve brought his personal guards and personally came to welcome the reinforcements from the capital. The army was in good spirits and well-equipped. It was obvious that they were strong. Count Steve was satisfied, thinking that Gravel and the rest were doomed this time. The officer in charge was very young and had a striking appearance. The officer in charge handed a letter sealed with the Empire's coat of arms to Count Steve. After reading the letter, Steve began to talk to the officer. The officer was called Adams, a lieutenant colonel. He had the army set up camp at the designated place. The next morning, Haya Castle was heavily guarded. Including the reinforcements Adams brought, there were more than 2,500 Imperial soldiers ready to go. This time, Count Steve personally took command. He selected 300 cavalrymen from his personal guards. The one left behind to guard the castle was his son, Baron Sadak. Less than 500 soldiers were left behind to guard the castle. Along with the bugle horn, an army of nearly 3,000 men departed from the castle, heading towards the Wilson mountain range in the north. Chapter 64. Earl Steve, please forgive my presumptuousness, but I would like to lead my team in the vanguard and clear the way. Lieutenant Colonel Adams politely asked Steve for instructions. Your courage is commendable. I approve. Steve looked at Adams with a hint of appreciation. And so, Adams led his 800-strong infantry line to the front of the main force. About 10 kilometers away from the resistance camp, Adams called for them to stop. Steve's men were unlucky and ran into all sorts of traps along the way. Earl Steve had a stomach full of anger. He wanted to kill all these bandits. What Steve didn't expect was for Adams to have his men turn around and face Steve's army. Your Excellency, this is the end of your road. Steve was shocked. He naturally understood the meaning of Adams's words, but it was too late. Hundreds of arrows suddenly flew out from both sides of the forest. Many of Steve's men were shot down. Adams had his men take out the red scarves they had prepared beforehand and wrap them around their necks to distinguish them from Steve's army. He led the 800 men and charged towards Steve's 1,000 men. Seeing that the situation was bad, Steve retreated with his personal cavalry. Along the way, Only corpses of Imperial soldiers were left behind. Lieutenant Colonel Adams shouted at Steve, who was running away. "My name is Bethman. Come and fight me one-on-one if you have the guts." Steve's army of 2,000 was reduced to less than 300 heavy cavalry. The rest were either killed or captured. Steve fled Wilson's mountains with anger at losing more than 1,000 men. At the same time, another group of about 300 Imperial cavalry retreated towards Haya Castle. Fog filled the air. When the defenders of Haya Castle saw the 300 or so retreating knights, they reported the situation to Baron Sadak. The Baron couldn't see clearly, but he still had the garrison open the gates and let a scout in to see what was going on. However, the cavalry suddenly sped up when they were less than 100 meters away from the gates. Noticing that something was wrong, Sadak immediately ordered the guards to close the gates, but it was too late. Gravel was the commander of the cavalry. He had his men tie the scars around their necks and quickly charged into the castle. They slaughtered their way through. Most of the guards in the city were old, weak, sick, and disabled. Naturally, they were no match for them. However, there was still a huge difference in numbers between the two sides. Gravel and the others were quickly surrounded by Sadak's troops. As time passed, the casualties began to increase. Gravel was left with less than 200 cavalrymen. He ordered everyone to retreat from the castle. However, the gate of the castle had been closed by the guards. Gravel and his subordinates continued to dwindle. At the same time, the ground was littered with the corpses of Nogran soldiers. Gravel had less than 100 people left, and Gravel had already begun to fight. His body was covered in blood, but most of it belonged to the enemy. At this moment, the city gate was opened. Gravel saw a rare opportunity and desperately rushed out of the city gate. However, before the cavalrymen could rush out of the city gate, they were shot dead by the archers on the city gate. To make matters worse, Count Steve, who had retreated, had returned with his personal cavalry. Some of the rebel cavalrymen who had just rushed out of the city gate were once again engaged in a battle with the personal cavalry. Gravel was left with less than 20 cavalrymen. They all held the determination to die and carried out the final charge. Only 4 of them rushed out of the castle, and there was a large group of pursuers behind them. At this time, Gravel had 7 or 8 wounds on his body. By the time the last rebel cavalryman fell, Gravel was already surrounded by Steve's personal cavalry. Steve saw Gravel covered in blood and ordered to capture Gravel alive. In the end, Gravel, who was stubbornly resisting, was knocked unconscious by the wooden handle of the enemy's spear. He was wrapped in a net and dragged back to High Castle. A few days later, in the rebel camp's command tent, "Marshal Merlin, are we really not going to send troops to rescue General Gravel?" Deputy General Bethman's face showed a hint of anxiety. "Marshal, General Gravel has contributed greatly to this operation." Darlena also pleaded with Alonso to send troops to rescue Gravel. "Steve won't let him go. If we don't save him, he'll be dead for sure," Bethman said again. Merlin was silent for a long time. He was thinking, as his decision concerned the lives of many people. "Let's wait and see." Merlin's final decision was tantamount to sentencing Gravel to death. "Aren't we going to save General Gravel?" Bethman couldn't control his emotions. "Calm down first, Bethman. I'm more anxious than you, but if I let my emotions get the better of me, Wilson's resistance will be the ones to suffer. That's why we have to stay calm. We can't fall for Steve's trap," Merlin said as tears streamed down his cheeks. Everyone's hearts sank. After Gravel was captured, Baron Sadak went to see him personally. "I didn't think you'd fall into my hands one day," he said as he kicked Gravel's crotch a few times. The immense pain almost made Gravel faint. After that, Sadak had someone tie Gravel to a wooden frame. After being whipped a few hundred times a day, Gravel's skin was already lacerated all over. Every time Gravel fainted, Sadak would have someone pour cold water on him to wake him up. Gravel could feel Azrael's call. He wanted to give up. He was too tired. However, a voice sounded in Gravel's heart. "You can't die. You have to live. Only by living can you have a future." "Yes, I want to live. I want revenge." Thinking of this, Gravel forced a smile on his face. Seeing Gravel smile, Sadak was very unhappy. He took the whip from the executioner and whipped Gravel himself. Gravel's pained expression gave him pleasure. I have to live, Gravel told himself over and over again. Gradually, he began to feel numb and hallucinate. He had a high fever. He didn't even know if he could make it through the night. Suddenly, a guard ran over and whispered something in Sadak's ear. A perverted smile appeared on Sadak's face. Bring her to my bedroom. Sadak's heart was bursting with joy. Not long after, a woman was brought to Baron Sadak's room by the guards. Indeed, it was Darlena. I want you to let Gravel go, Darlena said expressionlessly. That depends on your performance, my beauty. Chapter 65. That day, the Imperial Army won a victory, and at night, the Imperial soldiers drank and celebrated, but who knew that the barracks would be attacked by the enemy that night? That night, the flames were blazing, and there was fighting everywhere. Gravel saw the opportunity and escaped with a few slaves. They ran for their lives and finally ran into a forest. Gravel instinctively looked behind him and saw a group of pursuers rushing over. Gravel told the others to find a place to hide first, while he lay alone on the forest path. There were about a dozen pursuers, and the leader was riding a horse. The man on the horse saw Gravel lying on the ground and ran over first. He dismounted to see if Gravel was still alive. Who knew that Gravel nimbly grabbed him and stabbed the dagger hidden behind his back into his heart. Then Gravel rode the man's horse. The pursuers behind rushed over at this time and wanted to surround Gravel. Gravel's legs squeezed the horse's belly, and the horse immediately rushed forward, knocking a pursuer to the ground. The pursuers didn't have bows and arrows, so they could only chase Gravel from behind. Gravel, on the other hand, rode in circles with the pursuers to exhaust their stamina. Later, the pursuers were tired, and they lined up in a line, waiting for Gravel to rush over. Gravel desperately turned the horse's head and wanted to go around the pursuers. With a charge, the pursuers couldn't dodge and were killed by Gravel with a knife. The rest of the pursuers slashed at Gravel with knives, but fortunately, Gravel's riding skills were superb and he dodged. The pursuers sullenly picked up stones and threw them at Gravel, and the two sides were in a stalemate. The hidden slaves found some wooden sticks from somewhere and suddenly jumped out to fight the pursuers. Gravel took the opportunity to kill a few pursuers. In this way, the pursuers fled when they saw the situation was not right, and Gravel also lost a few slaves. That night, Gravel and a few others camped by a stream. They ate the grilled chicken they had just caught, chatting and laughing. But Gravel had something on his mind, Darlena, who had done everything for him. At dawn, Gravel and the others set off. Their destination was Haya Castle. After a few days of travel, Gravel and the others returned to Haya Castle. Gravel asked Hardadef to disguise himself and sneak into the city to gather information. Hardadef found a place to sit down in the tavern. He had heard that a nun was going to be sacrificed to God, and that 2 days later she would be burned alive in the convent near Seashell Castle. He also heard that the nun used to be Count Sadak's favorite woman. John told Gravel the news, and Gravel sent another person to the convent to find out if the nun's name was Darlena. In the end, Gravel confirmed that the nun was Darlena. When the sky darkened that night, Gravel sneaked into the convent with a few rescued slaves. There were no soldiers in the convent, only some monks. After avoiding the monks, Gravel finally found Darlena in a locked room. He saw that Darlena's hands and feet were tied with ropes, and Gravel cut the ropes. When Darlena saw Gravel, her face was full of surprise, and tears flowed out uncontrollably. Gravel also understood that Darlena had suffered too much in the past few months. He quickly untied Darlena and prepared to take her away. Suddenly, many flames appeared in the darkness. It turned out that the monks had already discovered Gravel and the others, and the monks told the guards of Haya Castle. Fortunately, there weren't many guards in this group. There were only a dozen or so of them, but they were all well equipped. Gravel told John and the others to take Darlena and escape along the pre-planned route, while he stayed behind to deal with the guards. Gravel attracted the guards to his side, so that the others could quickly evacuate. Gravel cleverly used the darkness of the night to disguise himself, and finally escaped from under the eyes of the guards. Unfortunately, an ignorant monk accidentally discovered him, and Gravel had to knock him out. Gravel quickly ran to the place where he had agreed to meet with John and the others. Gravel saw Darlena, although the two of them had a lot to say. A simple hug replaced all the words, and at this time both of them had tears in their eyes. "We will never be separated again." Yes, Darlena had never felt as happy as she did at this moment, as if the previous nightmare was finally over. After Gravel's ruckus, the whole of Haya Castle knew about it. At the same time, the monastery sent more troops to investigate the matter, and Baron Sadak was the person in charge. When he heard Gravel's name again, Sadak was so angry that his beard stood on end, and he ordered for the matter to be investigated. Gravel, on the other hand, quietly returned to the resistance camp with a few men. He couldn't help but feel emotional when he revisited the place. After all, Gravel was a little disappointed in Merlin after being captured. The resistance guard at the gate danced with joy when he saw Gravel. The guard used to follow Gravel and admired Gravel from the bottom of his heart. News of Gravel's return spread throughout Wilson's camp, and people came out to welcome Gravel. Most of them were Gravel's trusted subordinates, such as Tawny, Anna, Haybull, and Beffman. Even Merlin came out to welcome Gravel personally. However, Gravel caught a hint of something on Merlin's face. That night, a grand party was held in Wilson's camp. People sang and danced, chatted and laughed. Ever since the confrontation with Steve, the resistance army's reputation soared. Many people who wanted to rebel against the nobles joined the resistance army, greatly increasing their strength. Steve and the rest didn't dare to act rashly anymore, and the kingdom's war in the north made them too busy to take care of the forces in the mountains. Gravel once again became the general of the resistance army and would continue to lead the cavalry. A few days later, Gravel proposed to Darlena in public. At first, Darlena was surprised and didn't know what to do, but she still agreed. Gravel held a grand wedding ceremony for her, and with everyone's blessings, Gravel and Darlena got together. He knew how much Darlena had sacrificed for him, and he had to be responsible for Darlena. In the blink of an eye, winter came. That year's winter was exceptionally cold. The peasants were hungry and cold, but they had to pay high taxes for the nobles. Many people died in that winter. In order to deepen their rule over the poor, the nobles issued a decree. That was, the nobles had the right to enjoy the first night of any newlywed in their territory. The purpose of this was to reduce the bloodline of the Northland people, so as to deepen the rule of the empire in the Northland. This made the poor hate the nobles to the core, and a wave of resentment slowly accumulated until the day it exploded. Chapter 66. That day, the Imperial Army won a victory, and, at night, the Imperial soldiers drank and celebrated, but who knew that the barracks would be attacked by the enemy that night? That night, the flames were blazing, and there was fighting everywhere. Gravel saw the opportunity and escaped with a few slaves. They ran for their lives and finally ran into a forest. Gravel instinctively looked behind him and saw a group of pursuers rushing over. Gravel told the others to find a place to hide first, while he lay alone on the forest path. There were about a dozen pursuers, and the leader was riding a horse. The man on the horse saw Gravel lying on the ground and ran over first. He dismounted to see if Gravel was still alive. Unexpectedly, Gravel nimbly grabbed him and stabbed the dagger hidden behind his back into his heart. Then Gravel rode the man's horse. The pursuers behind rushed over at this time and wanted to surround Gravel. Gravel's legs squeezed the horse's belly, and the horse immediately rushed forward, knocking a pursuer to the ground. The pursuers didn't have bows and arrows, so they could only chase Gravel from behind. As for Gravel, he rode in circles with the pursuers to exhaust their stamina. Later, the pursuers were tired, and they lined up in a line, waiting for Gravel to rush over. Gravel desperately turned the horse's head and wanted to go around the pursuers. With a charge, the pursuers couldn't dodge and were killed by Gravel with a knife. The rest of the pursuers slashed at Gravel with knives, but fortunately, Gravel's riding skills were superb and he dodged. The pursuers sullenly picked up stones and threw them at Gravel, and the two sides were in a stalemate. The hidden slaves found some wooden sticks from somewhere and suddenly jumped out to fight the pursuers. Gravel saw the opportunity to kill a few pursuers. In this way, the pursuers fled when they saw the situation was not right, and Gravel also lost several slaves. That night, Gravel and a few others camped by a stream. They ate roasted chicken they had just caught and talked and laughed. But Gravel had something on his mind. It was Darlena, who had done everything for him. At dawn, Gravel and the others set off. Their goal was Haya Castle. After a few days of travel, Gravel and the others returned to Haya Castle. Gravel had Hardadef disguise himself and sneak into the city to gather information. Hardadef found a place to sit down in a tavern. He heard that a nun was going to become a sacrifice to the gods, and that she would be burned alive in the monastery near Haya Castle in 2 days. Hardadef also heard that the nun was Count Sadak's woman. Hardadef told Gravel the nun, and Gravel sent another person to find out if the nun's name was Darlena. In the end, Gravel confirmed that the nun was indeed Darlena. That night, when the sky darkened, Gravel sneaked into the monastery with a few rescued slaves. There were no soldiers in the monastery, only some monks. After avoiding the monks, Gravel finally found Darlena in a locked room. He saw that Darlena's hands and feet were tied with ropes. Gravel cut the ropes. When Darlena saw Gravel, her face was full of surprise and tears flowed out. Gravel also understood that Darlena had suffered too much in the past few months. He quickly untied Darlena and prepared to take her away. Suddenly, many flames appeared in the darkness. It turned out that the monks had already discovered Gravel and the others. The monks had told the guards of Haya Castle. Fortunately, there weren't many guards in this group. There were only a dozen or so of them, but they were all well equipped. Gravel told Hardadef and the others to take Darlena and escape along the planned route, while he stayed behind to deal with the guards. Gravel attracted the guards to his side so that the others could quickly evacuate. Gravel cleverly used the darkness of the night to disguise himself and finally escaped from under the eyes of the guards. Unfortunately, an ignorant monk accidentally discovered him, so Gravel had to knock him out. Gravel quickly ran to the place where he had agreed to meet with Hardadef and the others. When Gravel saw Darlena, although the two of them had a lot to say, a simple hug replaced all the words. At this time, the two of them had tears in their eyes. We will never be separated again. Yes, Darlena had never felt as happy as she did at this moment, as if the previous nightmare was finally over. After Gravel's ruckus, the news spread throughout Haya Castle. At the same time, the monastery sent more troops to investigate the matter, and Baron Sadak was the person in charge. When he heard Gravel's name again, Sadak was so angry that his beard stood on end. He ordered for the matter to be investigated thoroughly. Gravel, on the other hand, quietly returned to the resistance camp with a few men. He couldn't help but feel emotional when he revisited the place. After all, Gravel was a little disappointed in Merlin after being captured. The resistance guard at the gate danced with joy when he saw Gravel. The guard used to follow Gravel and admired Gravel from the bottom of his heart. News of Gravel's return spread throughout Wilson's camp, and people came out to welcome Gravel. Most of them were Gravel's trusted subordinates, such as Tawny, Anna, Haybull, and Beffman. Even Merlin came out to welcome Gravel personally. However, Gravel caught a hint of something on Merlin's face. That night, a grand party was held in Wilson's camp. People sang and danced, chatted and laughed. Ever since the confrontation with Steve, the resistance army's reputation soared. Many people who wanted to rebel against the nobles joined the resistance army, greatly increasing their strength. Steve and the rest didn't dare to act rashly anymore. Additionally, the kingdom's war in the north made them too busy to care about the forces in the mountains. Gravel once again became the general of the resistance army and would continue to lead the cavalry. A few days later, Gravel proposed to Darlena in front of everyone. At first, Darlena was surprised and didn't know what to do, but she still agreed. Gravel held a grand wedding ceremony for her. With everyone's blessings, Gravel and Darlena got together. Because he knew how much Darlena had sacrificed for him, he had to be responsible for Darlena. In the blink of an eye, winter came. That year's winter was exceptionally cold. The peasants were hungry and cold, but they had to pay high taxes for the nobles. Many people died that winter. In order to deepen their rule over the poor, the nobles issued a decree. That was, the nobles had the right to enjoy the first night of any newlywed in their territory. The purpose of this was to reduce the bloodline of the Northland people so that the empire's rule over the Northland could be deepened. This made the poor hate the nobles to the core. A wave of resentment slowly accumulated until the day it exploded. Chapter 67. The Third Era, 1482. The winter of that year was especially cold. The Northland people in the north of the empire felt as cold as the weather. Gravel couldn't help but feel sad when he saw it all happen. He hated this world where the nobles were rich and the commoners lived in hunger and cold. However, he felt powerless. He couldn't change anything and could only watch it happen. What Gravel didn't expect was that in just a few months, the number of people joining Gravel's resistance army skyrocketed. Every part of Norland had formed their own resistance army. Even Half, who had a deep grudge against Gravel, had formed a resistance army near Gorgorin because he was also a native of Norland. The German Empire's influence in the Northland grew weaker and weaker. The nobles no longer had the support of the Northlanders. Finally, the chance to fight the Empire came. Morin ordered Gravel and Bethman to lead their men to attack Haya Castle, which was no longer as strong as it used to be. The Imperial troops in the castle didn't dare to come out and fight. They could only hole up in the castle. They wanted to wait for reinforcements, but where would they find any? Now, there were only 800 Delman soldiers in the castle who were in low morale and exhausted. Gravel wasn't in a rush to attack the castle. Instead, he had the captives and family members of the soldiers call for their comrades and loved ones at the castle gates. Baron Sadak killed a soldier who tried to escape to keep the morale of the troops in check. However, his actions made even more people unwilling to risk their lives for the nobles. That night, a few brave soldiers worked together to tie up Baron Sadak and Count Steve. The next day, a white flag was raised at the castle and the soldiers surrendered. Just like that, Morin's army entered Haya Castle without losing a single soldier. After entering the castle, they began to pacify and take over the city. However, there were many things that people couldn't predict. As the Northland people were the masters for the first time, they started to capture people the moment they entered the castle. Anyone who disobeyed would be killed. Earl Steve's family was also arrested. There were also some descendants of the Derman. They were originally civilians, but because they worked for the Empire, they were also arrested. The men were reduced to slaves, while the women were used for the pleasure of the Northland people. The old, weak, sick, and disabled were all killed. Sometimes, good and evil were opposites. Good could also become evil. Count Steve's family consisted of 5 people: Steve, Sadak, Sadak's mother, Sadak's sister, and Sadak's wife. Mo Lin ordered his men to strip the 3 women of their clothes and tie them to wooden stakes in the square, allowing others to amuse them. Steve and Sadak, on the other hand, were locked up in the dungeon and were beaten up every day. Both of them were on the verge of death. Gravel saw it happen, but he couldn't stop it. This was how the world worked. Today, you might be high and mighty, but tomorrow, you might become a prisoner. Gravel was shocked. The people who were originally oppressed had become even more brutal than the previous rulers after gaining power. Now that the soldiers of the resistance army had vented their long-term oppression on innocent civilians, wouldn't more people suffer in the future? What was the purpose of this war? Soon, the victorious rebels took away all the valuable things in Haya Castle in less than 2 days. In the end, they burned Haya Castle to ashes. In the following month, rebels from all over the country followed Gravel's example. At this time, the Empire's royal family couldn't sit still anymore. Thodin the Great sent out his most trusted and most capable general. This general was called Alonso, and he was very good at commanding. After Alonso came to the north, he went through several battles with the rebels. At first, he lost more than he won, but after that, he won again and again, and the rebels were unable to recover. In the battle, Merlin was killed by the rebels. Wilson's rebels could only be led by Gravel. At the same time, Horfside also suffered a lot. In the last battle, Darlena was taken away by Alonso's men. Alonso saw Darlena's outstanding beauty and offered her to the church. The church thought that Darlena was unclean and offered her to Thodin the Great. Thodin the Great didn't care so much. When he saw Darlena, he was overwhelmed by her beauty. At this time, the previous queen had been dead for 3 years. Thodin the Great made Darlena the new queen. In the end, Gravel was very angry and sad. His woman had been taken away by the emperor, so he led his men to attack Alonso. He didn't expect that the battle would be so close to annihilation. Gravel had no choice but to escape into the mountains with his men. A year later, Gravel and Horf met at the military camp in Gorgon. They reached an agreement to put aside their differences and formed the Northern Coalition Army. They vowed to completely liberate the Northland and make the Northland the world of the Northlanders. At that time, they didn't expect that a few years later, the Black Dragon Ordeal would attack the capital of Kellendil. Theoden's whereabouts were unknown, and Alonso had to return to the capital to protect him. At that time, Gravel's opportunity would come. A new era would come, an era of freedom and dignity. Chapter 68. Across the sea from the Elven Kingdom, near the Swamp of Pain, lived a small tribe of nomadic orcs that hunted for a living. This tribe was called Thunderhammer, and they would sometimes go to the Swamp of Pain to hunt. Today, as usual, the adult male orcs were led by the young and brave tribe leader to hunt wild boars in the swamp. The ones left behind in the tribe were female orcs, young orcs, and old orcs. The hunting orcs came to the edge of the Swamp of Pain, where the air was filled with the smell of death. Every time they returned safely from a hunt, it was something worth celebrating. So every time they returned safely, the tribe would hold a bonfire party to celebrate the harvest. For the survival of the tribe, these young warriors had no choice but to risk their lives to come to the Swamp of Pain. What was different from usual was that today, these giant wolf companions were extremely restless. Giant wolves were orcs' companions, and their relationship was much closer than the relationship between humans and horses. This was because orcs would never saddle giant wolves. They thought that it was a great insult to their companions. The humidity in the swamp was very high, and it made these orcs feel very uncomfortable. Suddenly, the tribe leader found a huge hardened wild boar. He raised a javelin in his hand, aimed, and shot at the wild boar. For some reason, the wild boar didn't die after being hit by the javelin. Instead, it ran desperately into the depths of the swamp. The orcs couldn't just watch their prey slip away. Even though they didn't want to go deeper into the swamp, they still rode their giant wolves and chased after the wild boar. Just as they were about to catch up, the wild boar burrowed into a huge mound. There was a huge hole in the mound. The orcs got down from their giant wolves and walked to the hole. Suddenly, there was a heart-wrenching howl from inside. It was a wild boar's howl. The howl made the orcs shudder. Then, before the orcs could react, a black tide rushed out of the hole and swallowed the group of orcs. The tribe leader watched as all the orcs and giant wolves were drowned by the black tide. Painful howls resounded in the Swamp of Pain. No one knew what this was, until the orc tribe leader's eyeballs flowed out from his eye sockets and slowly disappeared. Only a pile of orcs and giant wolves' white skeletons were left. This black tide didn't stop. Soon, like a flood, it drowned the surrounding Thunderhammer tribe. All the female orcs, young orcs, old orcs, and all the living things were not spared. No one knew when this black tide would stop and when it would come. All the orcs were left with endless fear. Chapter 69. Derman Calendar, Third Era, also known as the Heroes' Era, April 25th, 1495. It has been 3 years since the wings of destruction attacked the capital. The past can no longer be changed, and a new story is about to begin. In these 3 years, the entire Northland has been controlled by Gravel's Northern Allied Army. Not only that, the Northland area under the German Empire has been officially renamed as the Kingdom of Northland, and the king is the famous Gravel. Our Demon Hunter's blade has become stronger and stronger, and we often receive bounty missions from various kingdoms. This time, we came to the bramble forest of the Elven Kingdom for such a mission. My comrades and I have been lying in ambush for nearly a week to capture the target. Our campsite is not far from a cave. This cave is not big, and even Kelvin is unable to enter it. However, our target this time is inside this cave. Because the bramble forest is a tropical rainforest, we are not used to the humid environment. Fortunately, we have Mayfair here. Mayfair constantly uses purifying spells to dispel the diseases in our bodies, so that we won't fall sick before we even see the face of the target. Today, as usual, it is close to sunset. We thought that the target will not come out, so we decided to temporarily remove our disguise and return to the campsite. But just as we were about to get up, a sound came from the cave entrance. Good heavens, a huge red head popped out from the cave entrance. It is a huge red viper with black stripes all over its body. Our target this time is this black-spotted viper, because a magician spent a lot of money to buy its gallbladder and magic stones. Once the target came out of the cave, all of us immediately entered the zone. This is already the first time we have worked together, and our cooperation is becoming more and more skillful. A fireball quickly flew towards the black-spotted viper. This is Natalia's fireball spell. The fireball accurately hit the black-spotted viper, but as a B-rank magic beast, the black-spotted viper's body is extremely tough. Magic beasts are not ordinary beasts. They often have a certain level of magic power, and their bodies are 100 times stronger than normal beasts. According to the strength of magic beasts, they are divided into 5 ranks: S, A, B, C, and D. Among them, S rank is the strongest and D rank is the weakest. We have never seen an S rank magic beast before. Legend has it that S rank magic beasts can destroy a town effortlessly. In addition, the most valuable part of a magic beast is the magic stones on its body. The magic stones are the source of their magic power and can release a large amount of magic power. It is a very valuable resource. Immediately after, Frant rushed forward and protected Natalia with his shield. I was in charge of attacking the black-spotted viper's flank with my sword of retribution. As I fiercely hacked down, the tough scales of the black-spotted viper actually caused the web between my thumb and forefinger to go numb. Now, as loud as I can't head's black-spotted vipers. The frost arrow hit the black-spotted viper's head, and the black-spotted viper's stamina was somewhat depleted. Ivana did a good job. Taking advantage of this opportunity, I once again brandished the black-spotted viper's head. This time, I finally left a deep wound on its head. The black-spotted viper was completely enraged by us, but it was powerless as Natalia's fireball hit it once again. Finally, with a loud bang, the black-spotted viper fell to the ground unwillingly. Standing on top of the black-spotted viper's body, I stepped on its head and used all my strength to slash at its neck. Finally, the snake's head was cut off. Even without its body, the snake's head was still able to move. Its perfect reflexes showed that it was born for battle. Flance and I worked together to deal with the black-spotted viper. Its poisonous fangs were carefully handled by me, and the venom was collected by Mayfair. Its magic crystal and snake gallbladder were quest items, so Natalia was keeping it safe. As for its skin and snake meat, we didn't let it go either. After eating a hearty meal of snake meat roasted by Kelvin, we packed our bags and prepared to return to collect the bounty. The capital of the Elven Kingdom, Avinia. A group of 6 people rode on 5 elven horses. Kelvin and Ivana rode on the same horse as we arrived at the Elven City of Hope. Hanging from my horse was our spoil of war, the huge head of the black-spotted viper. "We're back," Kelvin said happily. At the same time, on the other side of the sea, in the land of the beastmen, a huge black tide engulfed the beastmen's towns and tribes. In the main city of the beastmen's land of Zagru, the beastman chieftain, the Tauren chieftain, the beastman chieftain, the beastman general, and several other important figures were discussing countermeasures. The beastman chieftain didn't have much clothing on him. Due to the humid and hot environment here, his perfect figure was undoubtedly exposed. His explosive muscles, the wolf tooth necklace on his neck, and the tattoos on his face, all of which told the unknown story of his life to everyone who saw him. However, the most eye-catching thing was the scar on the beastman chieftain's face from his forehead to his right eye. It was a testament to what kind of battle he had experienced. Lord Victor, this black tide is approaching our main city. If we don't think of a way to stop it, our beastmen race will face extinction. The one who spoke was the beastman, General Balk. The beastman chieftain Victor looked pensive and turned his gaze to the Tauren chieftain. The current situation in the beastman's land was like this. Due to the Wings of Destruction, Black Dragoneer Deal's sudden attack on the German Empire's capital, Kellendil, the situation in the various provinces was very unstable. The beastman's land was still under the control of the Empire for the time being, and the human garrison of the Moonblade Fortress was in charge of supervising it. The internal situation of the beastmen's tribes was like this. Several of the larger tribes still had their own way of governing. Although there were wars from time to time, most of the time they didn't interfere with each other. Only the beastmen tribes and the Tauren tribes had formed an alliance. At the same time, they were also the largest faction in the beastmen's land. They had the right to manage the beastmen's land, while the administrative power was still in the hands of the Empire. Therefore, the beastman chieftain had to consider the feelings of the Tauren chieftain when making any decision. My people are suffering. I fully support Victor's decision. The Tauren chieftain spoke in the beastman language that he still wasn't very familiar with. With the Tauren chieftain Mari Blackhoof's words, the beastman chieftain Victor felt as if he had eaten a pill of reassurance. Then we will immediately send people to the Moonblade Fortress and ask for help from the human garrison. The beastman chieftain finally made his decision. But we aren't too familiar with the humans. Who is qualified for this mission? The Tauren chieftain asked. I know of a candidate. He is the most suitable. The beastman General Balk said. Who? He is. Chapter 70. It's actually him? General Balk, I've never doubted your strategic decisions. But this time, I feel that even if everyone in the world could complete this mission, he's the only one who's not up to it. The Tauren chief's beastman language wasn't very good, but this time he said it all in one breath. The beastman chief Victor's expression was also very complicated. This was because even the chief had heard of this beastman that the general had recommended. This beastman was called Bachelou. He was originally a wolf rider and was a member of the chief's wolf army. He used to have a glorious status, but now he was like this. People who heard his name felt as disgusted as if they had eaten a fly. It was all because of that incident. During the annual tribute ceremony of the beastmen, the most elite beastmen would escort a year's worth of taxes to the Moonblade Fortress. At the time, Bachelou was still very young, and it was his first time participating in such an important mission. The wolf army lined up outside the gates of the Moonblade Fortress to deliver the taxes to the human Archon. When it was Bachelou's turn, he accidentally farted in front of the Archon. The fart was very loud, but everyone pretended that they didn't hear it. But that wasn't the worst part. What happened next was the most terrifying part. Bachelou's fart was like a flood breaking through a dam. He let out a series of farts. This time, the human guards couldn't help but laugh. This time, Bachelou had lost all face for the beastmen. After returning, Bachelou was expelled from the wolf army. After that, Bachelou disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only a laughingstock. But now, at this critical moment, the beastman General Balk actually recommended him to complete such an important mission. The beastman chief trusted Balk, but this time, he couldn't help but hesitate. Balk, can you tell me why you recommended him? Victor asked. Sir Chief, Bachelou's fame among the humans surpasses all of us beastmen, and his strength can't be underestimated. If it really doesn't work, we can use force if necessary. In addition, he's very smart and can speak the human language. He's also very adaptable. Balk said seriously, "This Bachelou is that strong? How do you know?" The Tauren chief asked. "Because he's my little brother," Balk said. For a moment, the two chiefs were silent. "All right, let him go. But before you go, you have to sign a contract. If you can't complete the task, you'll be beheaded in public." "Yes, war chief." Balk accepted the order. "Isn't beheading in public a little too severe?" The Ox chief immediately tried to smooth things over. "Lord Molly, military orders must be obeyed." After receiving the order, Burke went to make the necessary arrangements. The next day, the people selected by Burke were ready to go. They were only waiting for the chief's orders. Bachelor didn't ride on the wolf's back. Instead, he walked side by side with his wolf companion. On his back was a crescent axe. Brave warriors, you have seen the current situation. A critical moment for the survival of the beast race has arrived. Whether or not the beast race can survive this crisis will depend on you. Set out. May the beast god bless you. The orc chieftain bid farewell to the members of the rescue mission at the city gate of Oglu. Bachelor patted his giant wolf companion. It was a frost wolf with snow-white fur. The frost wolf lowered its body, and Bachelor leaped onto the frost wolf's back. The frost wolf let out a long howl, and Bachelou and the other wolf knights dashed towards the Crescent Blade Fortress. Bachelou and the others didn't stop to rest until they reached the legendary indestructible Crescent Blade Fortress. When they arrived at the Crescent Blade Fortress, Bachelou and the others saw a few Imperial soldiers beating up an old orc herdsman. Not only that, but the Imperial soldiers were also loading the herdsman's sheep onto their carts. One had to know that this was the only place suitable for raising livestock in the orc lands, and those sheep were all the herdsman had. The actions of the Imperial soldiers were simply forcing the herdsman into a dead end. Bachelou called for the troops to stop and dismounted from his frost wolf. At that moment, one of the wolf knights signaled him to mind his own business. The mission was more important. However, Bachelou ignored him and continued to walk toward the group of soldiers. The soldiers beating the herdsman suddenly felt a chill run down their backs. They turned around and saw the tall and mighty Bachelou. What are you doing? Get out of here or else." One of the Imperial soldiers was startled at first, but he quickly regained his arrogant and despotic appearance. "Or else what?" Bachelou lifted the soldier up with one hand. The soldier kept struggling. Seeing this, the other soldiers all pulled out their weapons. "Sigh, this Bachelou, I knew it wouldn't be a good thing to send him here." One of the wolf knights muttered to himself, but he was still prepared for battle. Bachelou threw the soldier like a sandbag to the other Imperial soldiers. "Get out of here. I'll throw your head next time," Bachelou said. The Imperial soldiers were scared witless and ran towards the fortress in a sorry state. "You've got guts. Tell me your name, Stinky Orc." The soldier shouted as he ran. "My name is Bachelou. You better remember it." Bachelou helped the old orc herdsman up and said to the soldiers, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" Bachelou asked, "Warrior, thank you for saving me, but I'd rather die. Without those sheep, I'll still be dead in the end. Even if we don't have any sheep, we can still raise more. But if you lose your life, then you'll lose everything. Just you wait. One day, this grassland will belong to us orcs." Bachelou looked at the Moonblade Fortress not far away. "Sigh." The old orc herdsman sighed sadly. "Bachelou, we should go." The other wolf knights stepped forward to remind him. "I have some silver coins here. You can use them to save yourself." Bachelou took out some silver coins and gave them to the old orc herdsman. The old orc's hands trembled. Before he could say anything, Bachelou and the others had already left for the gate. Bachelou? The old orc herdsman felt that this name was very familiar. He seemed to have heard it somewhere before, but he couldn't remember where. Moonblade Fortress. Main gate. This place was guarded by fully armed Imperial guards. It was a world of difference compared to the second-rate troops that bullied the old herdsman. No wonder the orcs had no choice but to obey the rule of the German Empire. These Imperial Guards were all very elite troops. Whether it was in terms of equipment, appearance, or training, they all retained the pride of Odin the Great. "Stop! What are you doing?" a tall armored guard shouted at Bachelu and the others. Chapter 71. At this time, everyone had already sobered up. Since it was already a habit, everyone quickly entered battle mode. Natalia cast an arcane illumination spell, and the surroundings immediately became much clearer. These spiders were far more terrifying than we had imagined, and I was almost stung by one of their stingers. Actually, when I was following Highside the Elder, I had heard about these large spiders that lived in the swamps. Their poison was so terrifying that it could even kill people. Not only that, with the help of the illumination spell, I saw that there were far more than 8 stinger spiders. There were at least 20 of them. I didn't have time to think and immediately swung my sword of retribution at a spider that was trying to attack me. I used all my strength in this attack, and the spider was directly split into 2 halves. The spider's juices sprayed everywhere. At the same time, Flance used his shield to block the huge and ugly tentacles of the stinger spider. Natalia was behind Flance, and with one hand, she released a flame impact spell. The spider was roasted by the flames, and a burnt smell wafted out. Kevin and Avina were behind me, shooting at the group of spiders. The 3 of us formed a triangular formation. This way, we could protect each other's backs. This tactic was the result of our long experience in actual combat. About 2 or 3 stinger spiders died under Avina's hands because their bodies were full of ice arrows. However, Kevin's side wasn't so optimistic. The firearm he invented only managed to seriously injure 1 stinger spider. Because the stinger spider shell was relatively hard, the firearm's penetration power wasn't enough, and it took a long time to reload. If it wasn't for Avina taking care of Kevin's side, he would have been injured by these stinger spiders. Mayfair was also hiding behind Flance. Our Sir Knight was very competent, and he always fulfilled his duty of protecting the 2 mages in the team. Because our defense was flawless, these spiders didn't hurt us. Of course, this was thanks to the timely appearance of the Iron Wolf mercenary group. Their actions gave us precious time to catch our breaths. Fire arrows streaked across the night sky and pierced through the bodies of the poison spike spiders. None of the arrows missed their targets. At the same time, the warriors who were brandishing their dual swords also crazily brandished their dual swords and chopped at those spiders. Very quickly, with the help of the Iron Wolves mercenary group, those spiders were either dead or heavily injured, and the rest disappeared into the endless night. Hello, we are from the Iron Wolf mercenary group. My name is Avina, and this is Loser, the elven girl who also used a bow and arrow like Avina said. However, unlike Avina, this golden-haired elf girl used a flaming arrow. If not for her timely help, I would have been seriously injured. Nice to meet you. We are members of the Demon Hunting Blade Brotherhood. My name is Natalia. Thank you very much for your help. My name is Lyric. Thank you. My name is Avina. I'm Flance. I'm Mayfair. It's my turn. I'm Kelvin, the great inventor. Nice to meet you too. I'm Loser. I'm a warrior. That was how we in the Iron Wolves mercenary group got to know each other. That night, they brought us to the Iron Wolves mercenary group's camp not far away. Since it was already late, we wrapped ourselves in sleeping bags and went to sleep in a temporary tent. That night, we slept very soundly. When we woke up the next day, the sun was already high in the sky. We lifted the curtain of the tent and walked out. The dazzling sunlight felt good, even though it was still a little damp. The mercenary group's camp wasn't big, and there were about 40 to 50 people. Sharpened wooden fences were erected around the camp, and there were mercenaries taking turns to guard the camp. At this time, Avina saw that we were all awake. She came over and told us that breakfast was ready. She told us to go to the mercenary group leader's tent to eat breakfast. The 6 of us followed Avina to the leader's tent. The tent was very spacious. There was a large round table in the tent, and breakfast for 7 people was placed on the table. To my surprise, This legendary mercenary group leader wasn't as scary as I had imagined. On the contrary, he was very easygoing and easy to get along with. He had a thick beard on his face, and his body exuded an aura of vicissitudes of life. Everyone hasn't eaten breakfast yet, right? I haven't eaten either. Come, sit down and eat together. The mercenary group leader called Avina and invited us to sit down. Don't be shy. I don't have any delicious dishes here. It's just some simple dishes. Everyone, eat as much as you want. I'll take care of everything here. After the 6 of us sat down, the mercenary group leader began to speak. Since I hadn't eaten a decent meal for several days, I began to eat heartily when I saw such a sumptuous breakfast. Thank you for your hospitality, leader. This time, we didn't come here just to eat such a sumptuous breakfast, right? Natalia said, eat your fill first. After that, we will talk about the next mission. The mercenary group leader said. Just like that, we ate a full breakfast. The amount of food that we ate really shocked the mercenary leader, but he was very happy. Through the conversation at the table, we learned that this legendary heroic mercenary group leader's name was Fawns. After eating our fill, we began to discuss the next related matters. It turned out that the Iron Wolf mercenary group had been stationed in the Misty Swamp long ago under the guidance of Prophet Balance. The reason was simple. Prophet had sensed that the power of darkness here was restless. The ancient power seemed to have been corroded by the aura of the devil, and an evil power was awakening. This time, we Demon Hunter's Blade had received the leader's orders to come here and investigate. In the next period of time, we will conduct a thorough search of the Misty Swamp to find traces of the power of darkness and eliminate them as soon as possible. After knowing what we were going to do next, Fawns had Avina arrange our accommodations and told us to take a look around the camp. The camp was pretty good. Some mercenaries even set up stalls to sell their spoils of war. In short, the atmosphere in the camp was harmonious. The mercenaries had a good relationship with one another. However, a small boy caught everyone's attention. That boy sat alone in the corner of the camp. He sat there blankly, not saying a word. His name is Carlos. Don't disturb him. His parents died when the wings of destruction attacked the royal city. He witnessed their deaths with his own eyes. It was the guild leader who found the wandering Carlos and brought him back to adopt him. Carlos never talks to others. It's best if you don't provoke him. He's very special. Avina saw that we were curious and explained to us. Ivina even emphasized that the child was very special. Chapter 72. That little boy, Carlos, was really special, but that was something we didn't know until later. Over the next few days, the Demon Hunting Blade and the Iron Wolf mercenaries patrolled the perimeter of the camp, looking for traces of the dark forces in the Misty Swamp. Today, it was Ivina and my turn to patrol the western perimeter of the camp, while Ivina and Loser were in the same team. The Misty Swamp was called that because of the large temperature difference between the surface and the ground. The heat evaporated into steam and condensed into a large amount of fog. It was easy to get lost in the Misty Swamp. Ivina and I stayed close to each other, afraid that we would get separated. Are you from Avinia? No, I live in a small village near the bramble forest. I'm a wood elf, Ivina said without hiding anything. Although the comparison between wood elves and high elves sounded like the comparison between the rich and the poor among humans, the discrimination between elves was very mild. Ivina's appearance might only be considered average among elves, but she was definitely one of the top beauties among humans. I felt that her body and agility were her greatest assets. She was much more agile than Ivina. Not to mention, her figure was comparable to Natalia's. Perhaps she was a little embarrassed by my gaze, but she didn't dare to look me in the eye. Do you humans like to stare at girls like this? Ivina said, I'm just admiring. I have no other intentions. If you dare to have any other thoughts, my bow will not be polite. Ivina gestured at me. On the other hand, Ivina and Loser were together. Beautiful lady, it is my honor to be in the same team as you. Loser followed Ivina like a pug. You remind me of a sled dog I used to have. Its name was Sim, Ivina said with slight disdain. Where is it now? It signed a contract with me and became my summoned beast, Avina said. You won't turn me into a summoned beast, will you? Loser looked at Avina timidly. I had to admit that Avina had changed a lot in the past few years. From the waitress of the Green Dragon Tavern, to the helpless girl on the nameless island, to the independent archer in the Blood Castle, to the battle-hardened mercenary now. Not for now, but it depends on your performance, Avina said with a smile. Good. Loser broke out in cold sweat. We searched like this for about 3 days, but we still didn't find any clues. On the 4th day, Loser rushed back to the campsite alone. Everyone else hadn't gone out to search, so they were basically all in the camp. Loser panted and said that something bad had happened, that they were in trouble, and that Avina had called him back for help. Loser, Avina, loser. Lothar led us to the southwest side of the camp, where we finally saw Avina. She was struggling to hold on, and there was a beast man we didn't know fighting side by side with her. We had only heard of the Beastman race before, but we had never seen one with our own eyes. Now that we saw the appearance of a Beastman with our own eyes, we were shocked. The Beastman had green skin, a tall and burly body, fangs protruding from the corners of his mouth, and explosive muscles all over his body. In particular, this Beastman was riding a snow-white giant wolf. The giant wolf's movements were agile and ferocious. The Beastman and Avina had their backs facing each other. Surrounding them was another group of red-skinned beastmen that didn't ride giant wolves. These red-skinned beastmen should be the legendary evil beastmen. They were originally the martyrs of the beastmen race who died in battle, but were eroded by the unknown demonic energy of the misty swamp and turned into monsters. The few of us didn't say a word and immediately rushed forward. Flance and I rushed to the front. I raised the sword of retribution and slashed at the evil beastmen in front of us. Something unexpected happened. This group of evil beastmen didn't have a physical body. The moment the beastman was cut by the sword of retribution, he turned into a cloud of black gas and dissipated in the fog. My sword missed and almost cut my waist. This reminded me of the Ghost Rider in Boheap Town a few years ago. Flance didn't rush forward to attack, but held his shield in front of me. At this time, the evil beastman that disappeared suddenly appeared in front of us. Natalia's fireball flew behind us and hit the evil orc's body. Without exception, this group of evil beastmen were immune to magic. The fireball passed through the evil beastman's body as if it passed through a cloud of smoke and fell on the swamp behind the evil beastman. For a time, everyone attacked the 9 evil beastmen that surrounded Avina and the strange beastman. The evil beastmen were unscathed, but a mercenary was hit by the giant axe in the evil beastman's hand, and his whole body was cut in half. At this time, Mayfair remembered an ancient magic, undead dispel. Mayfair chanted a complicated incantation. With a white light, the group of evil beastmen was instantly turned into ashes, leaving only Mayfair weakly half-squatting on the ground. Great! The mercenaries cheered. I was also very happy because Avina wasn't hurt. After everyone buried the mercenary's body, they walked back to the camp. The beastman also followed behind us. Avina told us how she met the beastman. She and Loser were patrolling together when they heard the sound of weapons clashing. They followed the sound and found the beastman. After returning to the camp, the beastman put the giant wolf outside the camp because the mercenaries didn't agree to let the giant wolf in. The beastman followed Avina to the leader's tent and saw Fawns. It's you? Baturu. Fawns, I didn't expect to meet you here. As soon as the two of them met, they gave each other a warm hug, making us stunned. I didn't expect Fawns to have beastmen as friends. Baturu told Fawns the purpose of this trip through the foggy swamp. He came to find reinforcements. He also told Fawns about the disaster the beastmen had suffered and the Moonblade Fortress's human indifference. Also, he was the only one left of his team of wolf knights. Everyone had sacrificed themselves on this expedition. The foggy swamp was truly filled with danger. Not only were there evil beastmen, but there were also other dangers. In short, Baturu was very happy to meet an old friend again. That day, Baturu ate a full meal at the camp and chatted with fawns until late. Chapter 73. We packed up early in the morning because a new journey was about to begin. In the morning, Captain Fawns gathered all of us and told us a piece of exciting news. He told us that the Beastmen were suffering unprecedented hardships, and that this was most likely related to the power of darkness that we had been searching for. For this reason, we had to pack up and prepare to set out. We had to pass through the misty swamp and head to the ancient Beastmen's land. The mercenaries had already started packing up the resources that could be taken away from the camp. Just the tents and food in the camp were enough to fill several large carriages. Soon, all of us had finally packed everything that could be taken away from the camp onto the carriages. The majestic carriages and groups of mercenaries advanced toward the west of the misty swamp. The journey was relatively peaceful. We didn't encounter any evil beastmen or poison spike spiders. After traveling for about 5 days, we arrived at the main city of the Beastmen, Sardru, with the Iron Wolf mercenary group. Sardru meant City of Warriors in the Beastmen language. It was built with the blood of the Beastmen's martyrs. However, when we actually stood before the walls of the Beastmen's city, what we saw was very different from what we had imagined. How could this be? What happened? Bachelou said in fluent human language as he looked at the broken walls of Sardru in shock. I didn't think it would be so fast, Fawns said. Bachelor didn't say anything else and quickly rushed into the city on his frost wolf. The beastmen on the watchtower saw the beastmen rushing over, so they didn't shoot at them with their ballistae. However, the beastmen soon discovered a group of humans not far away. They immediately entered a state of alert. Fortunately, the group of humans stopped outside the city. Fawn saw that Sardru's city walls were heavily guarded and ordered the mercenaries to set up camp 2.5 kilometers away from the city. When Bachelou rushed into the city, he was scared silly by the scene in front of him. He didn't think that after not returning for more than 10 days, this place would become so devastated. Burned houses, crying female beastmen, and piles of beastman corpses on the streets. All of this made Bachelou's heart feel like it was being stabbed. He arrived at the chief's hall and saw a guard covered in wounds standing guard there. Bachelou walked in and saw the orc General Bulwark and the Minotaur chief sitting there with worried expressions. Seeing Batu walk in, Burke was shocked. Then, he went wild with joy and hugged Batu's day. He couldn't believe his eyes. Batu was actually still alive. It turned out that the wolf knight that had gone missing when Bachelou set out from the Moonblade Castle had returned to Oglu alone. Because he was afraid of being punished, he told the Beastman chief that the humans did not agree to send troops to aid the Beastmen. In a fit of anger, he even executed Bachelou. When Burke heard that his younger brother had been killed by a human, he was completely dumbfounded. For a moment, anger and sadness filled his heart. He begged the orc chief to avenge his brother. The orc chief once again sent the wolf cavalry to the Moonblade Fortress to demand an explanation, but this time they didn't come back with any. There was only a well-equipped human army and the corpses of the wolf cavalry. In the next 3 days, the human army launched a fierce attack on Audru. It wasn't until the 4th day that the orc army finally couldn't withstand the fierce attacks of the humans. The city gates were broken through by the human army. The Empire's army rushed in and began to burn, kill, and pillage the orcs. In the end, the orc chief Victor was captured and taken to the Moonblade Fortress as a hostage. Along with him were a few hundred orc children. One had to know that these children were the future foundation of the orc tribe. The human commander had the orc General Bulwark sign a treaty. The treaty stated that 50 carriages of gold would be handed over in a month. Otherwise, the orc chief and his children would all be executed. Just as he was feeling distressed, Bachelou suddenly came back. I'll go chop off the head of that idiot who lied about the military situation. Bulwark thought of the wolf knight who came back and said that Bachelou was dead, but he slowly sat down. This was because that wolf knight had already sacrificed himself to protect the orc chief during the war. This was the nature of the orcs. They didn't have to follow the orders of their superiors. but they had to be loyal to their own people. Every orc was a brave warrior and worthy of respect. Bulwark also told Bachelou that after the human siege ended, the black tide engulfed Sargeru. Although the orcs managed to defend Sargeru in the end, the black tide was just the beginning. This was only the first part of the black tide. The black tide turned out to be an army of insectoids that had appeared out of nowhere. No one knew when the black tide would return, and no one knew if the orcs could still hold on. After Bachelou understood what had happened these days, he told his brother not to worry and that everything would be fine. He had already brought reinforcements. After hearing Bachelou's explanation of the reinforcements, Bulwark fell silent for a while. I don't care if they're humans or elves. As long as they can help us fight against those hateful bugs and the humans of the Moonblade Fortress, they're our friends, the Tauren chief said after listening. All right, this is a special time. We need to unite all the forces we can, General Bulwark said to his brother. That night, Fawns came to the Orc Chief's hall under Bachelou's invitation. On the way, Fawns saw injured orcs everywhere. Those orcs looked at Fawns with hostility. Don't mind them. After all, we were just robbed by the humans, Bachelou said to Fawns. I can understand. I would do the same if it were me. Fawns didn't take it to heart. When he entered the hall, Bulwark and the Tauren chief had been waiting for him for a long time. Bulwark sized up this tall and sturdy human. His first impression of Fawns was quite good. The orcs were a race that revered strength. They had a natural respect for the strong. Hello, General Bulwark. I am the leader of the Iron Wolves mercenary group, Fawns. My brother has already introduced you to me. We are very grateful for your help. At the same time, we are willing to help you as much as we can, Bulwark said. Just like that, the leaders of both sides met, and the atmosphere was quite harmonious. Right now, aside from the Black Tide, the humans of the Moonblade Fortress are also our enemies. I wonder if you could stand on our side, sir? The Tauren Chief's question was a bit unfriendly. Right now, you don't have a choice. If the humans of the Moonblade Fortress want to do something, they don't need to beat around the bush, do they? Fawns countered. All right. Since they're going to cooperate, then the most basic thing is mutual trust. Without trust, we can't do anything, Bachelou immediately said. We orcs aren't without hope. We still have a bit of hope. It's just that our tribes are too scattered right now, and we each have our own way of doing things. Anyone who can reunite us orcs will be our benefactor. We are willing to go through water and tread on fire for our benefactor, Bulwark said. Chapter 74. As far as I know, the Ursa tribe is currently worrying about food. If we can solve their problem, I'm guessing that they'll be happy to join us, said the Minotaur chieftain. All right, let's start with this Ursa tribe and reunite the various beastmen tribes and races of the past, said Bachelou. If there's anything we can help with, the members of the Iron Wolves mercenaries and the Demon Hunter's Blade will not hesitate to do so, said Fawns. Balk stood up from his chair and walked towards Fawns. Human, you'll be our reliable ally. If you can help us beastmen overcome our current crisis, we'll go through fire and water for you. Balk extended his thick hand. Fawns and Balk clapped their hands together and swore that everyone would advance and retreat together. Just like that, our camp moved from outside Zagru City to inside the city. Even though there are still many beastmen who are looking at us with hatred, they should be understood. Fawns told us what Balk had said and also agreed to go with us to the Ursa tribe. A day later, at the Ursa tribe in the northern part of the Beastmen's territory. The Ursa tribe's territory was very desolate, with withered trees and not a single blade of grass growing. No wonder the giant bearmen here were worried about food, because there were only skeletons all over the place. Our group arrived at this land, escorting the iron rhinoceroses provided by the Minotaur tribe. Apart from the Demon Hunter's Blade and the Iron Wolves mercenaries, there were only the Minotaur warriors carrying large axes. Bachelou was also with us, because he was the Beastman's representative and was in charge of discussing the alliance with the Ursa tribe's chieftain. Actually, there was one thing I'd always been curious about. That was, when did Bachelou and Captain Fawns get to know each other, and what kind of story there was between them? Not far from us, A Ursa tribe's heavy infantry discovered our tracks. Following the low sound of a horn, something unexpected happened. Not good. Bachelu could tell that this was the Ursa tribe's attack horn. It seemed that this group of reckless Ursa tribe had taken us for a passing merchant group. Hunger made them unscrupulous in their search for food. Everyone be on guard. Fons told us. All of us were ready to fight. But when we really faced the enemy, our legs couldn't help but tremble. Behind a mound in the distance, dust was flying. At least 100 bear men heavy infantry charged at us. These fellows, wielding long axes and long blades, looked menacing. The ground was shaking. As a mercenary, I told myself that no matter what kind of enemy I faced, I shouldn't be afraid, and I shouldn't retreat. But at this moment, I really had the thought of retreating. These giant bear men were born tall and sturdy. They were even taller and stronger than beastmen. Comparing beastmen and giant bear men was like comparing humans and beastmen. It was easy to imagine how shocked the humans were when they faced the giant bear men. Not only that, but these giant bear men were also wearing heavy armor. I dare say that 100 bear men heavy infantry are enough to contend against a few thousand fully armed Imperial soldiers. Bachelet told us to stay calm and not panic. He stepped forward and explained the situation to the bear men. Riding on his frost wolf, Bachelet charged at the giant bear men like lightning. He made a sharp turn and forced a group of giant bear men to stop in front of us. He roared at the giant bear men and said something in a language that only the giant bear men could understand. I am a younger brother of Beastman, General Balk. I have come under the orders of my tribe's chieftain to help our former comrades and brothers. Bachelet roared at the giant bear men. His voice resounded throughout the world. I still remembered it clearly even now. The charging giant bear men stopped less than a kilometer away from us. We couldn't help but praise this brave beast man. A giant bearman clad in golden armor walked out of the giant bearman's ranks. He seemed to be the legendary chieftain of the giant bearmen. What did you say? You were sent by Victor? The giant bearman asked. Yes. Our chieftain sent me here in hopes of reuniting our brotherhood, Bachelet said. It seems that Brat Victor hasn't forgotten us old bones. The giant bearman's chieftain muttered to himself. Bachelet didn't tell the giant bearman's chieftain the truth. Everything was planned after Victor was captured by the humans. Now that the situation was critical, Bachelet had no choice but to lie to the giant bearman's chieftain. Why should my tribesmen and I believe you? The giant bearman's chieftain asked. Because we heard that your tribe's food harvest was low. Our chieftain sent us to transport a few dozen rhinos worth of food. We hope it can help the giant bearman's tribe, Bachelet said. That brat Victor still has some conscience. That's right. I appreciate your kindness. I guess you didn't come all the way here just to deliver food to us, right? The giant bearman's chieftain said. Right now, the insect plague is rampant. I believe that it won't be long before the black tide engulfs the entire Beastman territory. I hope that we can unite all the comrades who fought side by side with us in the past and face this disaster together, Bachelet said. Beastman, I have high hopes for you. You're just like Victor. Since you brought food to us when we needed it, you are our friends. We are willing to follow the will of the supreme beast god, Gudalox. We will fight alongside you, the giant bearman's chieftain said in front of all the giant bearmen. All the giant bearmen's heavy infantry knelt on one knee and covered their chest with their right arm. We are willing to follow the will of the supreme beast god, Gudalox. We will fight alongside you, all the giant bearmen said together. Just like that, we finally arrived at the giant bearman's tribe under the giant bearman's chieftain's invitation. Here, Bachelet had a new title, the son of the tribe. Many years later, Bachelet himself said that he liked this title very much. At this moment, our arrival was like a long-awaited rainstorm in the dry land, nourishing the giant bearmen. The giant bearmen were all happy after receiving the food. They were very friendly to us. Next, Bachelet and the giant bearmen discussed the matter of forming an alliance. The giant bearman's chieftain said that he was willing to follow the orders of the beastman's chieftain. They would advance and retreat together with the other tribes. Bachelor told the giant Bearman's chieftain that the war with the Crescent Blade Fortress would break out sooner or later. The giant Bearman should return to Sardru and build the Beastman's capital. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.